Chapter 673. The darts on the ground told Aunt Rue who the newcomer was, but she didn't want to believe it. She didn't dare. When she looked back, she had to face reality. The person walking towards her was none other than the Tang clan head and her own older brother, Tang Zijin. Perhaps things wouldn't be so bad if Tang Zijin was alone, but Long Fei was walking right behind him. He was a full head taller than Tang Zijin, his body tall and sturdy, his black robes blending into the darkness of the prison. As he walked step by step out of the shadows, his cold face seemed to emerge from the shadows and grow clearer and clearer. Silent, cold, merciless, and cruel. He was like a god of the night, a sovereign of the underworld, awe-inspiring without anger. Aunt Rue could be said to have watched him grow up. Although there was a hidden master-servant relationship between them, Aunt Rue had always treated him as a junior, as a child. Looking at him now, Aunt Rue realized for the first time that Fei was no longer the child who called her Aunt Rue. He was no longer a nephew of the Tang clan, much less a junior they could teach a lesson to. The bloodline of the imperial clan could never be erased. Aunt Rue stared blankly at him, her heart filled with reverence for Long Fei Yi for the first time. Very soon, Tang Zijin and Long Fei Yi arrived in front of Aunt Rue. Chu Shifeng appeared as well, standing behind Long Fei Yi. Aunt Rue was still in a daze while Jin Se was scared out of her wits. She gasped for breath as she backed away, accidentally spraining her ankle and falling to the ground. Only then did Aunt Rue recover her wits. You guys came, I just... Although Aunt Rue could guess what was going on, she didn't dare to dwell on it. She did her best to keep calm and explain her actions. Granny Kong. She was sleeping, so I came over first. I didn't even get to ask her a few questions before this girl. She couldn't even explain herself. Tang Zijin and Long Fei, you were both staring at her cold, waiting for her to finish. This girl is still so stubborn, saying that she doesn't know anything. I just want to scare her. Aunt Rue finally made things clear. Tang Zijin waited for Long Fei Yi to speak. The corners of Long Fei Yi's mouth curled up in a mocking smile, but he didn't say anything. Tang Zijin's expression became more and more unsightly. It was as if the sky was covered in dark clouds, and a storm could come at any moment. Tang Zijin had been invited by Long Fei Yi a long time ago. He had clearly seen how Aunt Rue had come in and what she had done to Jin Se. Everything Chu Shifeng said was just an excuse to lure the snake out of its hole. What old mama next door? What hidden weapon launcher? What note? Everything was fake. Chu Shifeng had only found the Jinsei because he discovered a hidden needle hidden in Kong Shi's belongings. It had taken him a few days to track down the clues before he'd found the needle. Aunt Rue was that traitor. She mistakenly thought that Jinsei knew everything, so she came to silence her. Seeing Tang Zijin's silence, Aunt Rue grew more and more flustered. Big brother, why don't we start the interrogation? Enough? Tang Zijin finally exploded. He punched the air in front of Aunt Rue, narrowly missing her head and making her bleed from her 7 orifices. Aunt Rue was still trying to explain things at a time like this? She was nothing more than a clown, laughable to the extreme. Aunt Rue was the person he relied on the most, the second in command of the Tang clan. How could she collude with an enemy of the Tang clan and betray the Duke of Qin? Moreover, she hadn't told him a thing when he'd questioned her before. Now that Long Fei Yi had schemed against her, he had no reason to protect her even if he still wanted to. Abominable. Infuriating. Laughable. Absolutely stupid. Tang Zijin was so angry that his breathing quickened. He was on the verge of losing control, while Aunt Rue's face had turned green with fright. Tang Zijin's expression told her that she was done for. She might have dodged Han Yunqi's trap, but not Long Fei Yi's inescapable net. Chu Shifeng's explanation just then wasn't perfect. There were loopholes in it. But why was she so impatient? It was too late for regrets. When she saw Tang Zijin's bloodshot eyes, her mind went blank. Her heart gave up all hope as she slowly lowered her head. Tang Zijin was beside himself with rage. He slowly unfurled his fist in front of Aunt Rue's face, then flung it across the cell with a resounding slap. Chu Shifeng's heart pounded at the sight, while Long Fei Yi remained expressionless. Aunt Rue was stunned as well. Even her parents had never hit her in her life, so she never expected her big brother to slap her at her age. She covered her face with a self-mocking smile and fell to her knees. Iru knows her wrongs and is willing to accept punishment. Tang Zijin laughed coldly. That's easy for you to say. How am I supposed to face the late emperor and little sister Wan as the clan head and older brother? How am I supposed to explain things to His Highness? Tang Zijin's Your Highness didn't refer to His Highness Duke of Qin, as Han Yunqi often did, but His Highness Crown Prince, the master of the Tang clan and East Qin's Crown Prince, Long Fei. Aunt Ru finally looked towards Long Fei Yi and declared, Iru will atone for her crimes with her death. Die? How easy it sounded. Long Fei Yi was about to speak when Aunt Ru suddenly broke into sobs. Big brother, I'll take responsibility for my own actions. After I die, I'll explain things to the Tang clan's ancestors. I'll apologize to the late emperor. I'll explain things to Big Sister. To Big Sister. Didn't I do all of this for Fei's sake? She's the princess of Western Zhou and Kinzo's favorite disciple. In terms of birth, looks, and martial arts, which part of her is inferior to Han Yunqi? He just had to have that damned girl of dubious origins. She only knows some unorthodox ways and thinks she's so great. Long Fei Ye's face turned completely cold. Aunt Ru saw it all, but kept going. I did collude with Duanmu Yao, but my conscience is clear. I didn't reveal a single secret of the Tang clan or East Qin. All I told her was the location of the Yao Shui estate. If that's wrong, then I'll admit it. But I don't regret it. Even if I die here today, I'll accept it. Tang Zijin was angry, but he more or less understood Aunt Ru. After all, he and Aunt Ru both opposed Long Fei Ye's choice of Han Yunqi. A complicated look flickered past his eyes before he asked, How could Duanmu Yao trust you if you only told her the location of the Yao Shui estate? All of Cloud Realm Continent knows that Duanmu Yao has feelings for Fei. I gave her a way to get injured and ask for help. I told her the location of the Yao Shui estate, and she agreed to take care of Tsang Qiuzi instead of killing Tang Li. Then what about the Lonely Mountain Pavilion? Tang Zijin asked next. Long Fei Yi had told him all about it just then. That's because I told Duanmu Yao beforehand not to trust anyone from the Tang clan. Duanmu Yao was only playing along with that servant girl, Aunt Ru said with a heavy sigh. Big brother, I admit my wrongs, but I don't admit to being a traitor. I didn't betray the Tang clan. Tang Zijin was waiting for those exact words. Only then could he lighten Aunt Ru's crimes. He couldn't just watch her die, could he? Before he could speak, Long Fei Yi said coldly, You didn't betray the Tang clan, but you betrayed this crown prince. This crown prince? Even Chu Shifeng was stunned, to say nothing of Tang Zijin and Aunt Ru. They'd never heard the Duke of Qin refer to himself as crown prince, so was he really going to reveal his identity as East Qin's crown prince today? He was being very serious. Chu Shifeng immediately fell to one knee. Seeing this, Tang Zijin backed up a step and bowed respectfully with his hands clasped in submission. Aunt Ru's heart pounded as she felt the same sense of reverence again, but she did her best to ignore it. She knew that if she didn't explain herself now, she'd never get another chance. Your Highness, Iru didn't do anything to betray you. Iru only thought. Long Fei Yi ignored her and asked Tang Zijin icily, Tang clan head, if you didn't betray this crown prince by revealing this crown prince's secrets to the enemy, then what is? Explain yourself properly to this crown prince. How was Tang Zijin supposed to explain himself? It really was a betrayal. I beg your highness to give some face to old man. Take into account that this matter didn't cause too many losses, and that Iru didn't have any ill intentions, and punish her leniently. This crown prince has already told you the East Qin imperial clan's rules. Traitors are to be executed through 9 generations. Long Fei Yi said. The Tang clan counts as a descendant of the imperial clan. 9 generations is one thing, but this crown prince will execute your own Tang clan instead. Tang Zijin immediately fell to his knees at these words. He and Aunt Ru exchanged gaping looks. They never expected Long Fei Yi to be so ruthless. Fei, do you know what you're saying? For the sake of a woman, you're going to destroy the Tang clan. Do you remember what your imperial mother told you before she died? Aunt Ru asked loudly. Tang Yuan had told him clearly that all orphans of noble families would harbor thoughts of betrayal. Only the Tang clan was trustworthy. She'd entrusted Long Feiyi to Tang Zijin's care. Long Feiyi finally lost his temper and demanded, "Then do you know what you've done?" "I know." Aunt Ru refused to budge an inch. Tang Zijin didn't have time to stop her. "It's you who doesn't know what you're doing. You were bewitched by that woman, Han Yunxi. Have you forgotten how your imperial mother died? Tang Zijin, drag her out and execute her on the spot. Otherwise, don't blame this crown prince for being merciless." Long Feiyi said. He'd only been bluffing before, but this time he was serious. He wouldn't go so far as to destroy the Tang clan, but he could definitely kill Iru with his ruthlessness. Tang Zijin knew that he had to give an explanation for this matter, or else the results would be even worse than now. "Your Highness, please calm your anger. This is all because of my lack of discipline as the head of the Tang sect. I hope that your Highness will allow me to abdicate and hand over the position of Tang sect master to someone who is qualified for the position." Tang Zijin pulled out his biggest bargaining chip. "Big brother." Aunt Ru was alarmed. "Shut up." Tang Zijin was very fierce. Iru was stupid, but he wasn't. Long Feiyi was so angry because Iru was targeting Han Yunxi. He told her long ago that she had to plan carefully before dealing with Han Yunxi. Unfortunately, she didn't listen. Now, not only was Long Feiyi wary, she was in danger of losing her life. Now that Long Fei was on guard against the Tang clan, he had no choice but to give up the position of clan head to solve the problem. "Your Highness, this matter concerns the reputation of the Tang clan, so please keep it a secret." Tang Zijin's eyes flashed with calculation as he reminded, "Your Highness didn't bring the Princess Consort here today, so I'm sure you want to keep this a secret. Why don't?" Chapter 674. The position of clan head was Tang Zijin's biggest bargaining chip to protect Aunt Ru's life. He spoke of it easily, but how could he give it up willingly? This was only a last resort, a temporary measure. At most, he'd lose the title of clan head, but he had to keep his authority firmly in his hands. After all, there were plenty of branch families and concubines in the Tang clan eyeing the position of clan head. Once the truth was exposed, he wouldn't be able to control the situation. Thus, even if he gave up the position, he had to keep the successor under his control. "Why don't we use Tang Li's wedding to pass the position of clan head to Tang Li? That way, no one will suspect anything," Tang Zijin probed. He wondered why Long Feiyi hadn't brought Han Yunxi with him this time. First, it wasn't appropriate for Han Yunxi to know too much about the Tang clan's internal affairs. Second, it could be considered a final show of mercy to the Tang clan. If Han Yunxi had been here today, then Aunt Ru would have been dead for sure. Thus, Long Feiyi wouldn't make a big fuss about today's events. Long Feiyi only looked at Tang Zijin coldly without a word. Tang Zijin was an old fox, but he'd fallen into his trap all the same. He hadn't brought Han Yunxi with him not because he was soft-hearted towards Aunt Ru, but because he wanted to hide his East Qin identity. If Han Yunxi was here, then it'd be hard for him to say anything. Tang Zijin had pushed Tang Li forward, but he had no idea that Tang Li's heart was no longer on his father's side after running away from the wedding. Seeing Long Feiyi remain silent, Tang Zijin grew uneasy and said, "Your Highness, Tang Li is marrying the head of Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. Compared to her, his status as the young clan head of the Tang clan truly is a bit lower. If he took the position of clan head, he wouldn't be so inferior. This subordinate's concession before the wedding is perfectly justified and won't arouse suspicion." Hearing this, Aunt Ru finally understood that Tang Zijin was trying his best to protect her. She remained silent, not daring to speak carelessly. "Your Highness, Aunt Ru's status is special. It really isn't appropriate to publicize this matter. As this subordinate sees it, this is a good idea." Chu Shifeng seemed to be persuading him, but he was actually helping Long Feiyi put on an act. Long Feiyi had achieved his goal, but he still had to settle the score with Aunt Ru. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to explain it to Han Yunxi. Seeing that Chu Shifeng had coaxed her, Aunt Ru finally dared to speak up. "Sister-in-law should keep that a secret too. Tang Li's about to get married, so don't make her worry." Long Feiyi and Mrs. Tang had a good relationship, so Aunt Ru played the emotional card. Long Fei finally relented. You can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. Aunt Ru's heart, which had been hanging in the air, finally settled back into her stomach. If you dare to reveal a single detail about what happened today and hurt her heart, you'll have to deal with it yourself. Aunt Ru nodded repeatedly. She was still counting on her big brother to save her in the future, so she didn't dare to hurt her sister-in-law's heart. After she left, Tang Zijin returned to his study and plopped heavily into a chair. He furrowed his brows and forced himself to calm down. Aunt Ru had said so much nonsense, but she was right about one thing. They could die, but they had to figure out Han Yunqi's identity first. To put it bluntly, they could destroy the entire Tang clan, but they had to figure out Han Yunqi's identity first. Aunt Ru had only eavesdropped on the Shadow Clan's affairs. She'd investigated for 2 years without finding anything, which made them uneasy. If Han Yunqi really did have connections with Western Qin's imperial clan, then Fei's heart would sink. How could he ever rise again? Tang Zijin couldn't imagine it. Aunt Ru's fate today had been a resounding wake-up call for him. He had to be more cautious than ever. Today, he'd given up the position of clan head simply because of this matter. He had to retreat for the sake of advancing. First, he'd dispel Fei's suspicions, then slowly make plans for Han Yunqi. He figured that if he could help Tang Li with the Tang clan's complicated affairs, he'd have time to plan things out properly. Long Fei ordered Chu Shifeng to keep a close eye on Aunt Ru before going to find Han Yunqi. Coincidentally, he ran into Han Yunqi coming out of her room. Long Fei, we were wrong before. We should start with Kong Shi. Han Yunqi said seriously. Although she couldn't make a decision yet, she'd suddenly thought of this when she woke up this morning. We were too impatient. We still need to investigate Kong Shi slowly. Aunt Ru has to have something to use against him. We'll definitely find out. Long Fei looked at Han Yunqi, his eyes filled with doting helplessness as he smiled faintly. What are you smiling about? Han Yunqi asked. Han Yunqi. Long Fei drew closer. How about I tell you something? Han Yunqi was at a loss. What? Do you want to hear it or not? Long Fei asked. Han Yunqi could only put the matter of Kong Shi aside for now. Go ahead. Your lordship. Long Fei spoke very slowly. He looked seriously at Han Yunqi's face and smiled faintly. You look pretty good when you're being silly. Your lordship will allow you to be silly once in a while. Han Yunqi was even more confused. What do you mean? Long Fei drew closer and hugged her gently. In a low voice, he told her everything about Aunt Ru. Besides the fact that he'd used his status as the crown prince to suppress Tang Zijin and Aunt Ru, he told her everything else. Han Yunqi listened in a daze before she finally understood. Okay, that's what you meant when you said you wanted to lure the snake out of its hole? Long Fei admitted with a nod. Then why did you let me make mistakes? Han Yunqi asked angrily. She suddenly felt like she'd thought herself clever before, like a joke. She hated herself for being so silly in front of Long Fei. At most, you were being silly, not making mistakes. Long Fei smiled. If you hadn't been silly, Aunt Ru wouldn't have trusted Chu Shifeng so quickly. Han Yunqi looked at him, at a loss for words. She was convinced. This man was so elegant even when he played tricks and toyed with people. He'd calmly handled the matter and done it beautifully. How about we imprison Aunt Ru at Returning Dragon Peak and have her take care of Grandma Kong until she grows old? Long Fei asked. Han Yunqi immediately nodded. Of course. Spare her life and give her a big present for Tang Li, all right? Long Fei asked next. Excellent. Han Yunqi couldn't think of a better idea. Aunt Ru's life was worth the position of Tang clan head, so they profited. Aunt Ru's life wasn't worth that much. She knew Long Fei wouldn't be stingy with his present for Tang Li, but she never expected it to be so extravagant. If Tang Li knew the truth, he'd probably worship Long Fei even more. Will we tell Tang Li the truth? Han Yunqi asked seriously. Of course. Long Fei was certain. If they didn't tell Tang Li the truth, how were they supposed to let Tang Li and Tang Zijin fight for power? Han Yunqi understood at once. This, in the end, it'll be difficult for Tang Li. With his personality, he'll feel terrible doing this. It's only a matter of time before he inherits the position. If he can take over Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's arms trade, he won't have to enter the tiger's den, Long Fei said. His heart was big enough to hold the world. His heart was small, too, and couldn't hold too many people. Tang Li counted as one of them. If possible, he didn't want to make things too difficult for his younger cousin. Tang Li inheriting the position of head of the Tang clan was safer than being a spy in Cloud Realm Trade Consortium. I didn't consider that. If we can subdue Ningjing, we really don't need to risk our lives in Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, Han Yunqi smiled. Han Yunqi pretended not to know the truth about Aunt Ru in front of Tang Zijin and the rest. A few days later, Tang Zijin found a death row prisoner as a scapegoat to solve the case. Han Yunqi didn't dig deeper, but cooperated with him to put on a show. Just like that, the matter passed. As for Lady Tang, she really didn't know any of this. She only regretted that Tang Li was about to get married. If only Aunt Ru had left a little later. 3 days after Aunt Ru was imprisoned on returning Dragon Peak, Tang Li's wedding procession set out ahead of schedule. It would take 5 days for a round trip, so they could bring the bride to the Tang clan at the auspicious hour of the 28th day of the 3rd month. Chapter 675. The wedding procession for the young head of the Tang clan was bound to be extravagant and grand. But in reality, Tang Li only brought a few guards and a red carriage to 10,000 Commerce Hall. It was nothing compared to the procession he'd brought to propose marriage. It could only be described as shabby. Even Long Fei couldn't stand it. He asked Han Yunqi, "Was this your idea?" Tang Li's own idea. Han Yunqi would never do something so immoral. The wedding procession was a lifetime's worth of memories. How important was that? Although she'd given Tang Li and Lady Tang plenty of ideas, Tang Li still made most of the decisions himself. Why? Long Fei didn't understand. You don't understand when it comes to chasing after girls. Han Yunqi grinned. Long Fei seemed a little embarrassed as he avoided her gaze. He didn't ask any more questions. Chasing after girls didn't seem to exist in his world at all. A few days later, Tang Li's group arrived at the Grand Canyon. It was the same guide that led Tang Li's group inside. Han Yunqi and Long Fei didn't follow them. An hour later, Long Fei said, "Tang Li should be at 10,000 Commerce Hall by now. Let's move out." It wasn't easy to pick up a bride. Tang Li would probably be tormented by Cloud Realm Trade Consortium's people by the time he arrived at 10,000 Commerce Hall for a cup of tea and a bowl of sweet eggs. There were plenty of onlookers at the wedding procession. Long Fei had long told Tang Li to stall for time and attract as many people as possible. That way, they'd be able to save the Chu clan elders. Han Yunqi took out a small porcelain bottle. As soon as the stopper was removed, a sweet, honey-like scent wafted out. Long Fei immediately covered his nose. He hated sweet things. "It's my favorite dessert. Have a taste." Han Yunqi joked. Long Fei really wanted to drink it. Han Yunqi was shocked and quickly snatched it away. "I'm just kidding. This is the colorful queen bee's poison. It can kill." This prince was also joking. "Can't you tell? What are you nervous about?" Long Fei asked seriously. I will cooperate with you," Han Yunqi replied. Long Fei suddenly snatched the poison from her hand and poured it directly into his mouth. He was so fast that Han Yunqi couldn't stop him and didn't see him clearly. Anyway, she was shocked. "Long Fei, are you crazy?" She hurriedly concocted a large bag of vomit-inducing liquid from the detoxification system and gave it to Long Fei. "Drink it quickly and spit out all the poison." There was no antidote for the colorful queen bee's poison. She could only expel the poison from the body as soon as possible before the poison took effect. She was about to go crazy from anxiety, but Long Fei asked with interest, "Is this also a joke to cooperate with this prince?" Han Yunqi was stunned for a moment, then looked at the porcelain bottle in his hand seriously. She realized that the stopper of the porcelain bottle had been blocked at some point. Long Fei was playing with her. She heaved a sigh of relief, and her tone turned cold. "Is it very fun?" The number of times that Han Yunqi was angry with Long Fei could be counted on one hand. This time, she was much fiercer than the previous few times. Long Fei looked at her, and a trace of embarrassment flashed past his eyes. He didn't say anything for a long time. To be precise, he didn't know what to say. He had been with this woman for so long. Although he had seen her angry a few times, this was the first time he encountered such a situation. She was completely right. He was completely wrong. She had joked with him before, and he had really scared her. Han Yunxi glared at Long Feiyi for a long time. She originally thought that Long Feiyi would apologize, but who knew that this guy didn't say a word and just looked at her expressionlessly. She couldn't be bothered with him anymore. She took the colorful queen bee's poison and added a poison. The sweet smell became even stronger and gradually filled the surrounding air. Not long after, a rather large poisonous wasp flew over and circled around the colorful queen bee's poison for a long time, as if it was sniffing for its scent. After Han Yunxi put away the porcelain bottle, the poisonous wasp flew towards the entrance of the canyon. Chase after that wasp, hurry, Han Yunxi said cold. Long Feiyi didn't say anything and picked up Han Yunxi and chased after it. Han Yunxi's tone was still very cold. Put me down. I'll wait for you outside. You follow that poisonous wasp. Long Feiyi didn't reply and hugged her even tighter. Put me down. I won't be of much help even if I go in. I'll only be a burden to you. Han Yunxi was very rational. Impossible. I'm worried. Long Feiyi said indifferently. Because of his temper, Han Yunxi lowered her eyes and didn't argue with him. She just let him carry her and flew into the canyon. After entering, they realized that the canyon was very complicated. In the dense forest, there were 7 or 8 small paths that led in different directions. If there wasn't someone to lead the way, they really wouldn't know where to go. Long Feiyi hugged Han Yunxi tightly and shuttled through the forest. He was wary of the guards lying in ambush while chasing after the poisonous wasp. The poisonous wasp flew very fast and flew through the dense foliage. If one wasn't paying attention, it was very easy to lose it. However, while Long Feiyi was multitasking, he was also distracted by Han Yunxi. He knew that Han Yunxi's gold ingot was used to lead the way, but he wasn't clear on the specific principle. What's the meaning of this poisonous wasp leading the way? He asked indifferently, as if the unpleasantness just now didn't happen. Han Yunxi's tone was still cold. This kind of poison belongs to the yin and yang category. One yin and one yang can attract each other. Han Yunxi reminded him anxiously. He was a little helpless, but he quickly relaxed and let her touch him. His upper body was bare. Not to mention his firm pecs and six-pack abs, even his back and arms were firm, tough, and full of strength. They were sexy as hell. Han Yunxi was busy treating the wounds, but she still couldn't help but get distracted. Are you still angry? Long Feiyi asked again. Han Yunxi didn't answer, but Long Feiyi stubbornly demanded an answer. You're still angry, aren't you? Han Yunxi really wanted to pinch his wounds to vent her anger. He knew she was angry, but he kept asking. Couldn't he say anything else? Suddenly, Long Feiyi's voice softened. Yunxi, don't be angry anymore, all right? Han Yunxi's hand stiffened on his back and didn't move for a long time. Yunxi. It sounded like a lover's whisper. He rarely called her that, but when she heard those 2 words, she felt so familiar and intimate. It was as if they'd moved a few steps closer. He didn't know how to apologize, but stubbornly asked, Don't be angry anymore, all right? She didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she slowly drew closer, her small hands rubbing his shoulders before planting a light kiss on his firm shoulders. She didn't let go immediately, but pressed her lips against his shoulder with a smile. For the sake of this beautiful back, I'll forgive you this once. Long Feiyi couldn't help but raise his head and suck in a cold breath. Then he clenched his teeth as if in pain. Did you pull on your wounds? Han Yunxi panicked and quickly withdrew to check the wounds. Long Feiyi was the one who didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Where does it hurt? Here? Or is it this side? Han Yunxi asked as she lightly touched the wound. Long Feiyi decisively grabbed his clothes and put them on. It's fine. We're in a hurry, so let's go. Your wounds will. It's nothing serious. I'll be fine after applying medicine. Let's save him first. Long Feiyi interrupted her domineeringly. Han Yunxi could only give up. After she put away the porcelain bottle, Poisonous Wasp continued to lead the way while Long Feiyi carried her and caught up. The 2 of them were still silent, but the atmosphere was obviously better. After a long time, Long Fei finally spoke. Han Yunshi, HM? What's there to apologize for? You didn't do anything wrong, but you're being silly again. Long Fei smiled faintly. What do you mean? Han Yunshi really didn't understand. Long Fei smiled but didn't say anything. This woman was so silly that she didn't realize that she was the one who lit the fire. He allowed her to be so silly. I'll tell you later. Long Fei was in a good mood. Were these two flirting? Who flirted with who? Just as they were walking towards Commerce Hall, Tang Li attracted a large crowd because he flirted with Ning Jing's maidservant. Hang her up in the back mountain and feed her to the wolves, Ning Jing ordered gloomily. Young miss, won't Tang Li laugh at you if you do this? Since things have come to this, just let them be. Shuang Yu knows her limits. The one who spoke was a middle-aged woman who was calm and reserved. She was Ning Jing's wet nurse, and everyone called her Aunt Shuang. Ning Jing was quite obedient to Aunt Shuang's words. She punched the windowsill and didn't say anything else. At this time, Shuang Yu seriously said to Tang Li, Young Master Tang, our young miss is in the room. Swear to the door. Tang Li was very obedient. He shifted his position and knelt on one knee facing the door. Shuang Yu inwardly sighed in relief and continued, Swear that from today onwards, you will only love Miss Jing and treat her well. You will pamper her wholeheartedly, protect her, and listen to her unconditionally. You will never let her starve, freeze, or tire herself out. Tang Li really did raise his hand. Seeing this, Ning Jing became even more disdainful. With her personality, she would have stopped watching a long time ago, but for some reason, she was still watching and waiting. All right, Tang Li was about to say the same, but he suddenly retracted his hand and asked gently, If this young master only loves her, then what will you do? Shuang Yu was about to cry. She really didn't know what she should do. Ning Jing's eyes narrowed into a straight line. She angrily said, Is everyone else dead? Can't we deal with him? If she wasn't the bride, she would have rushed out to deal with Tang Li long ago. Shuang Yu was already the boldest out of all the maidservants. The other maidservants watched from the side and were all glad that they weren't the ones being teased. How would they dare to help? As for the men, they didn't help because they were at the door of the bride's room. According to the rules, men weren't allowed to interfere. At this time, Annie Shuang opened the door and came out. Seeing this, Tang Li thought that he had delayed enough time and couldn't continue acting. At least Long Fei and Han Yunshi were already in Commerce Hall. He couldn't delay for too long. Otherwise, after the two elders of the Chu family were rescued, the Tang sect would also be suspected. He hurriedly walked towards Annie Shuang and immediately forgot about Shuang Yu. Son-in-law really likes to joke. Aren't you afraid of missing the auspicious hour? Auntie Shuang smiled kindly. Can I see my Jing, or if I don't joke? Tang Li asked. My Jing, Auntie Shuang felt helpless and could only ignore his words. She said seriously, That depends on how sincere young Master Tang is. It's up to Miss Jing whether to open the door or not. Auntie Shuang didn't come out to make things difficult for Tang Li. She knew that Tang Li didn't sincerely want to marry her. This marriage was too complicated. As a servant, she couldn't help Miss Jing much. However, this was still a marriage. In the end, Tang Li would become her man and her husband. She hoped that Tang Li could be more serious. Even if it was just an act, he should pretend to be sincere. He should beg to open the door and take Miss Jing away with him. He should let Miss Jing leave with pride and dignity. No matter how strong a woman was, she was still a woman. No matter how strong a woman was, she would still be weak. Miss Jing prepared her own dowry, sewed her own wedding dress, and dressed herself up. She had to marry herself. Today, none of Miss Jing's relatives came. Whether it was Ning Chung, Ning Nuo, or Ning Anchuan, none of them were here. No one would see her off. Sincerity? Tang Li was deep in thought. Soon, he walked to the door and shouted, Yang Ning Jing, are you coming out? What was going on? Auntie Shuang frowned, feeling a little hopeless. She could only pray that this playboy wouldn't hurt Miss Jing. What was she asking for? Ning Jing was no longer by the window. She leaned against the door with a cold smile. She didn't care about the auspicious time. She had already decided to let Tang Li stand outside the door for 3 days and 3 nights to torture him. Oh Yang Ningjing, are you still not coming out? I'm warning you. Tang Li's tone was fierce. He was a completely different person from when he was teasing Ningjing. Everyone broke out in cold sweat for her. It seemed that Tang Li really hated Ningjing. Warning? Do you think I'm a pushover? Ningjing sneered disdainfully. She tilted her head and asked the servant girl beside her, He dares to warn me in my territory? What can he warn me about? Is he not going to marry me? As soon as she said that, she heard Tang Li shout from outside, I'm warning you. If you don't come out, I'll block the door and not leave. I, Tang Li, will only marry you, Ningjing. Ningjing was stunned. Her mocking smile froze on her face. Everyone around them was stunned. They didn't expect Tang Li to say something like that. So domineering, so romantic. At the sight of Tang Li kneeling on one knee with a domineering and stubborn expression, the young maidens all felt their hearts thump in their chests. Thump, thump, thump. Ningjing unconsciously pressed a hand to her chest and stood unmoving in place. Ningjing, did you hear that? Don't come out if you dare. If you stay in the house forever, I'll guard you forever. I'll do what I say. If you don't believe me, you can try. Tang Li shouted again. This was really a warning. What she hated the most in her life was being warned. But why couldn't she get angry at him? Why couldn't she get angry? Ningjing, are you a coward? Do you have the guts to answer this young clan head? Tang Li goaded him into action. Ningjing immediately turned to open the door. At that moment, the maidservants on both sides looked over in disbelief. Ningjing actually felt awkward. She said fiercely, What are you looking at? I'm going out to teach him a lesson. Since when did she know how to explain to the maidservants? The maidservants were so scared that they didn't dare to say anything. Thus, Ningjing opened the door just like that. When the door opened, she saw Tang Li dressed in a red robe, kneeling on one knee in the middle of the door. His back was ramrod straight. Even if he was kneeling, he still had an imposing appearance. His movements were natural and handsome. He was high-spirited, handsome, and outstanding. He was as clear as a jade tree in the wind. Ningjing didn't know that this man could look so good in red. Tang Li didn't expect Ningjing to open the door personally. He also didn't expect that she would come out without wearing a red veil. This was the first time Tang Li saw Ningjing in a woman's dress. It was the first time he saw Ningjing with makeup. It was the first time he realized that Ningjing was such a beautiful woman. Her hair was like a cloud. She had beautiful eyebrows, clear eyes, and red lips. She was as bright as the spring and as beautiful as the autumn moon. She was a feast for the eyes. Tang Li stood there in a daze. He was infatuated. He only regained his senses when Aunt Shuang closed the door. Actually, it wasn't just Tang Li who was infatuated. The surrounding people were also dumbstruck. No one knew that President Jing was so beautiful. Aunt Shuang was quite frightened by Ningjing. How could a bride run out without wearing a red veil? Young Master Tang, congratulations. Please wait a moment. She didn't have time to explain and hurriedly pulled Ningjing to sit on the couch. Young miss, you can't show your face like this. It's not auspicious. It'll also cause gossip. If I don't go out, he'll really think that I'm afraid of him. Ningjing looked very calm. In fact, her hands were tightly clasped together. She was also frightened by herself. Why did she open the door? Aunt Shuang carefully helped Ningjing put on the phoenix coronet and red veil. She then checked her other clothes before she was relieved. Young Miss Jing, you've had enough. Let him in. Ningjing calmly agreed. But for some reason, her heart couldn't help but beat faster. After the door opened, Tang Li strode in. He had already regained his senses. When he saw Ningjing sitting on the couch waiting for him, a strange feeling flashed through his heart. But he didn't pursue it. He stood in front of Ningjing and said lazily, Come on up. I'll carry you out. He didn't know what Ningjing's expression was, but Aunt Shuang immediately glared at Tang Li. Only then did Tang Li change his words. Jinger, I'm here to marry you. Come home with me. Ningjing didn't say anything. She jumped onto Tang Li's back and wrapped her arms around Tang Li's neck. She pressed her right hand on his chest and warned coldly, Walk steadily. If you fall, you'll lose your life. Clearly, Ningjing came back to her senses. Tang Li carried Ning Jing out of Wan Commerce Hall and into the carriage. He got on the horse and immediately left. At this time, where were Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi? Chapter 677. After Tang Li picked up his new bride, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi had long followed the poison wasp to 10,000 Commerce Hall. The main defenses of the hall were located in the canyon, so there were only ordinary guards inside. Han Yunqi, who didn't know any martial arts, could only allow Long Fei Yi to carry her as he flew. Although she looked like trash, she was actually a great help to Long Fei Yi. Once they conquered the canyon and entered 10,000 Commerce Hall, the rest was as easy as turning over a hand for an expert like Long Fei Yi. Ning Cheng relied on the fact that the world didn't know of the relationship between the Ning clan and Cloud Realm Trade Consortium to imprison the two Chu clan elders here without much defense. Soon enough, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi found 10,000 Commerce Hall's secret prison. They avoided the guards and found a hidden cell. The so-called secret prison was simply a small, dark room used to imprison troublemakers or criminals who had committed serious crimes. This secret prison was completely sealed off. There was only a small iron door, and there was a strangely shaped lock on the door. Long Fei Yi was dressed in black robes and a black cloth covering his face, making him look mysterious and handsome. Even his knocking on the door was pleasing to the eye. "Who's there?" A familiar voice called out from inside. It was none other than the Chu clan head. The two Chu clan elders had been locked up here for a long time. Aside from the daily delivery of food, no one else had come to contact them. The delivery men never knocked on the door, so the two Chu clan elders were on guard. "Your lordship." Long Fei Yi's low, icy voice gave the two Chu clan elders a fright. They never expected Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi to find their way here. What was he doing here? Duke of Qin? Long Fei Yi, it's actually you? The voices of these two people were half surprised and half wary. "Long Fei Yi, what are you planning to do?" Chu Yuni asked. He hated Long Fei Yi as much as he hated Ning Cheng. Although Long Fei Yi and Ning Cheng were enemies, the Chu clan was destroyed because of the two of them. Long Fei Yi had come here. Other than killing them, what else could he do? "If you want to leave, then shut your mouth," Long Fei Yi warned. Rather than saying that he was here to save people, it was more accurate to say that he was here to kidnap people. Whether the two elders of the Chu clan were willing or not, he would definitely take them away. These two were his bargaining chips to keep Chu Tianyin in check. Chu Tianyin was already an important chess piece in Cloud Realm Continent's western regions. "Long Fei Yi, you mean you want to bring us out?" "Long Fei Yi, are you joking around here? You seem to be in a good mood." The two elders of the Chu clan didn't believe him, but their mocking tone revealed traces of hope and hope. After all, they'd given up hope for a long time and accepted the fact that they were going to spend the rest of their lives in prison. Right now, they needed a definite answer, but Long Fei ignored them. He picked up the iron lock on the door and pondered. Although it was easy to get in, any loud noise would attract a group of people. The best way to get them out was to unlock the door. Hearing Long Fei Yi fiddling with the chains, the two elders of the Chu clan exchanged glances with complicated feelings. "Long Fei Yi, just what are you trying to do?" Chu Yuni couldn't help asking. "Of course I'm taking you out." "What? You're too used to prison and don't want to come out?" Han Yunqi asked coldly. When she recalled the crimes these two had committed against Gu Beiwei, she was filled with anger. If she didn't need them, she wouldn't have come to save them. "Tianyin, just what's going on?" The Chu clan head grew anxious. "Hasn't Tianyin already thrown himself into Ning Cheng's camp? Let's talk after we get out. What's the origins of this lock?" Long Fei Yi asked. "Why should old man trust you?" Chu Yuni asked coldly. Han Yunqi snorted disdainfully, while Long Fei Yi said, "Because your lordship found this place. Do you want to be Ning Cheng's dog or your lordship's hawk? Why don't you two give your lordship an answer right now?" The two elders of the Chu clan wore complicated expressions at his words. Although Long Fei Yi hadn't told them the truth, they could guess that Chu Tianyin had chosen Ning Cheng over Long Fei Yi. If Long Fei Yi could find Ning Cheng's lair, then Ning Cheng had already lost a huge step. Chu Tianyin's choice was wise. Neither Chu Yuni nor the Chu clan head were fools, but they couldn't bring themselves to do it right now. After some hesitation, Chu Yuni said loftily. If you want my Chu clan to swear allegiance to you, we'll have to see if you have the skills. Duke of Qin, if you can unlock this 1,000-trick lock, the two of us will leave with you. 1,000-trick lock? Exactly. Long Fei had been wondering if this lock was anything but simple, but he never expected it to be such a rare object. The 1,000-trick lock was a unique lock designed by 1,000 craftsmen. There were no more than 5 of them in the world. The lock was made of sturdy material and ingenious design, so it was impossible to open it with a hack or a pry. Even Tang Li wouldn't be able to do anything to it, much less a layman like him. When Long Fei didn't reply, Chu Yuni laughed mockingly. If not for this lock, the two of us wouldn't have had to wait for you to save us. The Chu clan head hastened to add, Your Highness Duke of Qin, how about this? You break open the door and we kill our way out? How's that? Saving them and killing their way out were two different things. If they were rescued, the Chu clan troops would probably end up as Long Fei's subordinates. Instead, they'd join hands to fight their way out. Hearing these words, they grew even more frightened. Long Fei, if the two of us die here, Tianyin will definitely take revenge, the Chu clan head said anxiously. Of course, he'll find Ningcheng for revenge. Your lordship will be happy to help, Long Fei said with a cold smile. Han Yunqi almost laughed out loud. If Long Fei killed these two elders and pushed the blame onto Ningcheng, then Chu Tianyin would definitely believe him if he said they only saw corpses on their way here. The two elders of the Chu clan turned pale. No matter how much they cared about face, they had no choice but to swallow their pride and obey. They took Long Fei's poison pills and swallowed them. Once we leave 10,000 Commerce Hall, this Wang Fei will help you cure the poison. If you dare to play any tricks, even the gods and immortals won't be able to save you, Han Yunqi said cold. The two of them didn't dare to create a chance to escape. Anyone who dared to question Han Yunqi's poison skills wouldn't have a good ending. Just like that, Long Fei led Han Yunqi and the two Chu clan elders behind him. They silently left 10,000 Commerce Hall and followed the same path out of the canyon. Once they were out of the canyon, Han Yunqi treated the two elders of the Chu clan as promised. Now that the poison was cured, the two old men had no strength to flee even if they wanted to. Long Fei was still afraid of attracting the attention of the Ning clan back at 10,000 Commerce Hall, but outside the canyon, he could deal with the two of them with a single stroke of his sword. After all, one of them was blind and the other crippled, so they couldn't even shoot arrows. Long Fei handed them over to the waiting shadow guard. The Chu clan head hesitated for a long time before finally giving up. Esteemed Wang Fei, this old man has a request. Han Yunqi knew what he wanted to say. He wanted her to treat the poison in his arm. Cold, she stared at him and said, I don't want to save you. I never wanna. She didn't cripple his arm to avenge Gu Beiwei, but she was already merciful enough to treat his arm. Gu Beiwei. Chu Yuni was about to speak when Long Fei stopped him. Someone come. Xiao Yu's pavilion. Without your lordship's orders, no one is allowed to approach. Han Yunqi would probably never see these two again. Long Fei wouldn't give her the chance either. Thus, these two would never get a chance to reveal Gu Beiwei's identity as a Shadow Clan member in front of Han Yunqi. Gu Beiwei had long asked Long Fei for this matter, so he'd kept it in mind. After dealing with the Chu clan elders, Long Fei and Han Yunqi had to hurry to the Tang clan to attend Tang Li and Ning Jing's wedding. Currently, Tang Li and the rest should still be on their way. Long Fei and Han Yunqi had to go ahead of time to disguise themselves. They couldn't show their faces in front of Ning Jing. That very afternoon, the prison guards came to patrol the area only to find the cell empty. Leaving aside the guards, even the steward of 10,000 Commerce Hall was scared out of his wits. They reported the news to Ningcheng while frantically searching for the 1,000-trick lock. Unfortunately, they couldn't find a trace of it even after digging 3 feet into the ground. Ningcheng was in the imperial study discussing how to take back the stolen grain from the Jianghu with a few military officials. When a eunuch whispered the news to his ears, Chapter 678. Ningcheng demanded angrily, Who did it? All of the officials in the room were stunned. Although they didn't know what was going on, they didn't dare to be curious. Without needing Ning Chung to chase them away, they all retreated out of the room in an orderly fashion. The last one to leave even closed the door behind him. The eunuch was scared out of his wits as well. He said timidly, "I'm not sure." There weren't any traces left behind. It had to be said that Ning Chung looked good even when he was angry. His handsome face was full of heroic spirit, but none of the servants around him dared to look at him. Despite his anger, he was still able to keep his cool and asked coldly, "Where's Chu Tianyin?" "He's been in Fenglin Prefecture the entire time. He fought a battle with the Western Zhou army the day before yesterday, and it's still ongoing," the eunuch reported. "Summon Zhang Shihong from the Ministry of War." He stood up and walked to the military map hanging on the wall. He stood tall and straight with his arms crossed, looking very domineering. Although he wasn't dressed in military uniform, he emanated the iron-blooded aura of a military man. As soon as the Ministry of War's men entered, he ordered, "Mobilize 5,000 cavalrymen from Quanshan City to the northwest and 10,000 infantry from Yunlong Town to attack Fenglin Prefecture from the east. Pass on my orders. Anyone who captures Chu Tianyin will be rewarded with 10,000 taels of gold." "Your Highness Duke of Ning, this?" Zhang Shihong had no choice but to gather his courage and ask, "Why is this so?" "The Chu clan troops are the main force defending Fenglin Prefecture against Western Zhou's army. This." Before he could finish, Ning Chung slowly turned around. Seeing his cold expression, Zhang Shihong didn't dare to continue. "Yes, this official will do it right away." With the two elders of the Chu clan rescued, Ning Chung wouldn't be able to control Chu Tianyin anymore. Chu Tianyin would definitely rebel. As soon as Zhang Shihong left, Grand Concubine Ningen, hurried over. She'd received news from Cloud Realm Trade Consortium as well and asked as soon as she entered, "Does this matter have anything to do with the Tang clan?" Ning Chung was thinking the same thing. Not necessarily. Everyone knows that Tang Li married Ning Jing. It's possible that the rescuer used this chance. It's not easy to sneak into the canyon, find one commerce hall, and rescue them. Ningen reminded, "You mean?" Ning Jing also became serious. "Tang Li and Long Fei have a close relationship," Ningen said seriously. Ning Chung could no longer remain calm. If the Tang sect was involved with the Long Fei, then Ning Jing's marriage would not be simple. "It's not too late to stop Ning Jing now. We can't let Ning Jing's sacrifice be in vain," Ningen said anxiously. Ning Jing was taking a risk by marrying over with her arms. Ning Jing was capable, but she was still a woman. Once news of this spread, more people would believe that Chu Qingge had colluded with Ning Chung to commit regicide. Long Tianma wouldn't let go of such an opportunity to recruit Emperor Tianhui's former subordinates. Very soon, Ning Chung would be faced with internal and external troubles. Meanwhile, Long Fei wouldn't need to waste a single soldier to wait for Western Zhou, Tianning, and Tianan armies to fight while he reaped the benefits. What did it mean to plan a strategy within a tent to determine victory from 1,000 li away? This was it. Ning Chung might have won last time, but he'd lose miserably this time. Pass down orders to keep a close eye on Northern Li's movements. "The Bailey Navy is on standby," Long Fei ordered. "This subordinate understands." Chu Shifeng immediately withdrew. At this critical juncture, Northern Li was the biggest variable. Naturally, Long Fei had to be on guard against it. As soon as Northern Li sent troops south to interfere with the war in the west, the Bailey Navy would definitely head north from the Eastern Sea to pin down Northern Li's forces. Long Fei was already wrapping up the game of chess in the west. He wouldn't allow anyone else to interfere. Of course, Northern Li's strength had yet to recover, so they were probably doing the same thing as Long Fei. They could only wait and see what would happen. Once everything was settled, Long Fei and Han Yunqi put on their human skin masks and snuck onto reclining Dragon Peak to attend Tang Li's wedding. Actually, Long Fei wasn't interested in the wedding at all. He was purely there to accompany Han Yunqi. Ning Jing had no idea that the Ning clan was in deep trouble. Currently, she was bowing to heaven and earth with Tang Li, Tang Zijin, and Lady Tang sat high up in the Great Hall, flanked by the clan elders. The atmosphere was solemn, but not festive at all. Ning Jing's red veil prevented her from seeing her surroundings, but she could still feel the atmosphere. She allowed the wedding nanny to lead her to the bridal chambers after 3 bows. But Tang Zijin suddenly stood up. Wait for what? Was he going to make things difficult for her in front of everyone? Ning Jing prepared herself mentally, but Tang Zijin only spoke with sincerity. Tang Li is getting married today, so he's a man with a family. Old Man and Lady Tang have a big gift for him. Lady Tang was puzzled and glared at him unhappily. Did Tang Zijin really want to give a gift, or make things difficult for Ning Jing? No matter what he wanted, shouldn't he at least discuss it with her? How dare he use her name without discussing it with her? Lady Tang was about to stop him, but Tang Zijin suddenly took off the ring that symbolized his status as the head of the Tang sect and said seriously, "Today, Old Man hands over the position of head of the Tang sect to Tang Li. From now on, Tang Li will take over the Old Man's position and take full control of the Tang sect." His words caused an uproar in the hall. Lady Tang was dumbfounded. "Zijin, you." Tang Zijin smiled gently at her, but when he faced Tang Li, his expression was cold and solemn. He walked in front of Tang Li and personally put the ring on Tang Li's thumb. "Tang Li, I'm entrusting the Tang sect to you. You have to be worthy of the thousands of disciples." As he spoke, he patted Tang Li's shoulder. "In the future, don't throw a tantrum and run off the mountain for no reason." Hearing this, the shocked crowd more or less understood. Sect head Tang must be using this method to restrain Tang Li and keep him in the Tang sect. He really had put in a lot of effort. Lady Tang covered her mouth in agitation. She had always thought that Tang Zijin didn't care about his son, but now she realized that Tang Zijin cared more about his son than she did. After learning the truth, Tang Li couldn't say anything. He looked at Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi, who were hidden in the crowd, with grief in his eyes. Actually, the one who had put in a lot of effort was Long Fei Yi. She didn't know if Tang Li would understand. Ning Jing's hands turned cold when she heard all this. If Tang Li became the head of the Tang sect, didn't that mean she would become the wife of the head of the Tang sect? Would she have to stay with Tang Li on reclining Dragon Peak from now on? Ning Jing was still in a daze. Soon, the crowd was filled with congratulations. Of course, the matchmaker's voice rang out again. "Send them to the bridal chamber." Chapter 679. Send them to the bridal chamber. The wedding nanny's voice brought Ning Jing back to her senses. She had long prepared for the bridal chamber. She drugged Tang Li unscrupulously, but it didn't mean that she was a loose woman. She had already given Tang Li such a big advantage. She would never give him any more. Suddenly, Tang Li took her hand. His hand was warm, thick, and rough, giving Ning Jing a wonderful feeling. They had made love last night, but this was the first time they held hands. Ning Jing subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand, but Tang Li held it more tightly. Ning Jing couldn't see Tang Li's face because of the red veil. She thought that Tang Li must be looking at her at this time. "Oh, look at young Master Tang. You can't hold hands." The matchmaker suddenly slapped Tang Li's hand away. Ning Jing withdrew her hand in time. There was a feeling of emptiness in her heart, but she ignored it directly. "It's time to call him Master," Mrs. Tang reminded her with a smile. She was very happy. Once her son got married, she would be the old man's woman, and Tang Zijin would be the old master. Yes. Isn't this servant speaking too fast? "Master, don't worry. When you get to the bridal chamber, you can hold hands however you want. Before entering the bridal chamber, you can only carry or hold each other, but you can't hold hands." The matchmaker reminded them with a smile. She took the red silk and stuffed it into Tang Li's hand. "Hold it tight." She gave the other end of the silk to Ning Jing. "Hold it tight. Follow your husband." Ning Jing did as she was told. She could feel the strength of the other end of the silk. Tang Li seemed to be holding it very tightly. Because of the matchmaker's teasing, there was already a commotion around. Ning Jing had been waiting for Tang Li to speak, but Tang Li didn't say anything from beginning to end. This was not like that guy's character. What was he doing? What trick did he want to play? Ning Jing was curious, but she remained calm and collected. Come. The groom is leading the bride into the bridal chamber. Under the guidance of the matchmaker, Tang Li walked in front, and Ning Jing followed behind. From the side door of the main hall, they went all the way to Tang Li's Ingshua house. Mrs. Tang and Tang Zijin went to host the wedding banquet. Long Fei Yi accompanied Han Yunxi and the crowd to join in the fun. Normally, after Tang Li sent the bride to the bridal chamber, he should come out to attend the banquet. However, after half a day, Tang Li did not appear. Although everyone was curious, no one dared to ask. As for the disturbance in the bridal chamber at night, probably no one would dare to disturb them. After the banquet began, the originally quiet Tang sect became lively again. However, Crouching Dragon Peak was too high up, so the sounds below could not be heard. On the contrary, on Huilong Peak, where Aunt Ru was, she could hear the noise but could not see it. Aunt Ru sat alone on the cliff as she tried her best to look around. Unfortunately, she couldn't see a thing. She'd even prepared a custom-made dress for Tang Li's wedding, but it turned out to be useless in the end. Listening to the noise in the distance, Aunt Ru felt very uncomfortable. Unfortunately, there was no one to talk to. She felt a little regretful in her heart. Although it was lively outside, the bridal chamber was silent. After entering the bridal chamber, there were many things to do, such as lifting the veil, drinking cross-cupped wine, and so on. However, after Ning Jing sat down on the bed, Tang Li said to the matchmaker, "You can go out now?" Sect Master. The matchmaker was about to explain when Tang Li gave her a big red packet. The matchmaker smiled. Okay, I won't disturb you." She was already at the door, but added, "Sect Master, the bride must be tired from the journey." Speaking of this, the matchmaker smiled more ambiguously. "Take it easy. There will be plenty of time in the future. Don't tire her out." Ning Jing suddenly clenched her hands. Fortunately, the red veil covered her face. Otherwise, the matchmaker would probably be killed by her eyes. In fact, the matchmaker was innocent. She knew nothing about the past between Ning Jing and Tang Li. She was really worried about Ning Jing. Generally, after the bridegroom sent the bride to the bridal chamber, he would go out to drink and would be busy until very late. It was just past noon, but Tang Li stayed in the room and did not go out. When was he going to go out? Tomorrow morning? It would be strange if the bride was not tired after such a long time in the afternoon and evening. The bride was a young and tender flower, while Tang Li was in the prime of his life. Moreover, he was a martial arts practitioner, so how could the bride withstand his torment? Tang Li did not say anything. He waved his hand and motioned for the matchmaker to go out. The matchmaker was also helpless. Finally, she said, "Remember to drink the sweet red date and lotus seed soup. From then on, the husband and wife will be as sweet as honey. You will have a child early." Ning Jing clenched her fists more tightly. Tang Li still waved his hand very patiently and let the matchmaker go. This time, the matchmaker was finally willing to leave and help them close the door. Tang Li seemed to be worried. He walked over and bolted the door from the inside. Hearing the sound, Ning Jing's heart inexplicably tightened. Damn it, she had clearly made very thorough preparations, so why was she still nervous? Soon, she heard Tang Li's footsteps. He walked towards her step by step. This bastard. Why didn't he go out in broad daylight? What kind of trick did he want to play? Ning Jing lowered her eyes and remained calm. Soon, she saw Tang Li standing in front of her. He was wearing a pair of black boots with golden edges. He was low-key and luxurious. Ning Jing wanted to lift the veil and take off the phoenix coronet and rosy cloak. She had worn these complicated things for several days, and her neck was about to break. However, she could not move. She was afraid that Tang Li would find something to use against her and make things difficult for her. She sat and waited for him to speak. Helplessly, he said nothing. He sat beside her and pulled the other end of the red silk. The room was silent. The two of them just sat there. After waiting for a long time, Tang Li still did not speak. Cold smile appeared on Ning Jing's lips. She thought that Tang Li wanted her to speak. There was no way. If he wanted to wait like this, she would be very happy to accompany him. Suddenly, Tang Li gently tugged on the red silk. Ning Jing, who was holding the other end of the red silk, immediately noticed the movement. The contempt at the corner of her mouth deepened, but she did not show it. Unexpectedly, Tang Li increased his strength bit by bit. It looked like he was going to pull her over. Ning Jing did not want to play tug-of-war with him. Just as the red silk was pulled tight, she suddenly let go. The red silk was hit on Tang Li's body. A faint paw sound could be heard. Ning Jing snickered and pretended that nothing had happened. She sat there quietly. However, Tang Li did not make a fuss about it. He still did it quietly. What kind of medicine did this guy have up his sleeve? Ning Jing began to feel a little nervous. After all, this was the Tang sect. It was his territory. She could only deal with changes by remaining unchanged. Unexpectedly, the two of them sat like this for 2 hours. Ning Jing's but was a little numb. She could not help but imagine Tang Li's appearance and expression. Was this bastard still staring at her? She was troubled by a question. Why did the bride have to wear a red veil, but the groom did not? In fact, Tang Li did not look at her at all. Although he was sitting, he was leaning on the high pillow beside him and leaning lazily. He supported his head with one hand and closed his eyes to take a nap. He was sure that if he did not make a sound, Ning Jing would not dare to do anything. He was exhausted from the journey. He had to take a good rest in the afternoon. Only then would he have the energy to subdue this woman at night. One was sitting upright, the other was leaning lazily. One was nervous, and the other was sleeping. The quiet and beautiful afternoon passed just like that. When night fell, Tang Li lazily opened his eyes and sat up straight to stretch. Ning Jing secretly paid attention to the movements around her and became alert again. Tang Li got up and rubbed his stomach as he walked to the table. He was hungry. He finished the 20,000 red date and lotus seed sweet soup in no time. Bastard! Ning Jing cursed in a low voice. She had been hungry for a long time. It looked like Tang Li was planning to waste her time. She could not sit still and wait for death. A cold glint flashed past her eyes and she shouted, "Ouch, it hurts. My stomach hurts." It was their wedding night and she was sick. What could he do to her? She covered her stomach with both hands and curled up, shouting, "My stomach hurts. Help! Help me!" Tang Li looked over suspiciously and his lips curled into a cold sneer. However, he quickly put on his act and rushed to Ning Jing. At this moment, Ning Jing happened to remove the red veil. "My stomach hurts, she shouted halfway and suddenly became quiet. God, what did she just see? She saw that the room was filled with red roses. It was simply a sea of flowers. On the empty space in front of the couch, candles were lit into a large heart shape. Inside, her favorite white daisies were placed in the shape of the word Jing. Ning Jing was stunned and forgot to put on her act. Cold and quiet, she had rushed all the way from Wan Commerce Hall to get married. But why was there such care and surprise hidden in this wedding room? Tang Li, do you know that I've long given up and treated it as a wedding in this lifetime? Ning Jing looked at Tang Li in disbelief. Under the candlelight, Tang Li's eyes reflected the shadows of the flowers in the room and also her shadow. His eyes were affectionate and gentle like water. Seeing the shock and emotion in Ning Jing's eyes, Tang Li was very satisfied, but he pretended not to notice anything and asked anxiously, "What's wrong with your stomach? Why does it hurt?" Ning Jing then regained her senses and hurriedly continued to put on her act. "It hurts a lot. I can't take it anymore. Let me lie down, all right?" Tang Li did not say anything and hurriedly helped Ning Jing take off her phoenix coronet and helped her lie down on the couch to tuck her in. "Have you caught a cold? Or did you eat something bad?" As Tang Li asked, he hurriedly went to get some hot water. "Drink some water first. I'll get a doctor." Ning Jing had not drunk a drop of water the whole day and was waiting for the water to drink. She drank and said, "No, maybe my period is coming, so it hurts a lot. I'll be fine after a night's rest." This trick was simply an insult to him. A sly look flashed in Tang Li's eyes, and he pretended not to understand. "Period? What kind of illness is that? Is it serious? I'd better go get a doctor. I'm worried about you." No matter how open-minded Ning Jing was, she would still feel awkward. Tang Li was such a playboy. How could he not understand this kind of thing? He must be faking it. Don't think that she could not see that the decoration of this room was indeed very meticulous, but there was an ulterior motive. Trying to deceive her? No way. I'm not sick. It's... Ningjing motioned for Tang Li to come closer and wanted to explain to him, who knew that she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her stomach, so painful that she suddenly broke out in cold sweat. What was going on? Chapter 680. What was going on with Ningjing? Her stomachache was not completely faked. She had just secretly taken a poison that she had hidden in her mouth. This poison was called Haunted Night. Once taken, she would have a stomachache at night. However, it was only a slight pain and was not fatal. After 3 nights of pain, the poison would dissipate. After the poison dissipated, the person would be very weak and would need to rest in bed for a month. She had long expected that Tang Li would find a doctor for her, so she had made sufficient preparations. Even if the doctor really came, he would not be able to find the specific cause of the illness after taking her pulse. Anyway, she planned to recuperate in bed for this month and be served by others. With Auntie Shuang watching over her and her family coming to visit, Tang Li could not do anything to her. The person who sold her the poison clearly said that after taking the poison, she would only feel a slight pain. Why did her internal organs hurt as if they were being cut by knives? She was not afraid of pain, but this kind of pain was simply unbearable. In just a short while, she was already sweating all over. Looking at Ning Jing's pale face and trembling lips, Tang Li's eyes flashed with contempt. He thought to himself, this shameless woman really knows how to act. If he had not fallen for her tricks before, he would definitely have fallen for it. He leaned closer and asked curiously, if it's not an illness, what is it? Ning Jing did not answer. To be exact, she did not have the strength to explain to him. She pressed her hands tightly on her stomach, hoping to relieve some of the pain. Let's call a doctor over. Tang Li seemed to be very anxious, but in fact, he did not even want to call a doctor over. Ning Jing was just pretending. It was useless to call a doctor over. He was very willing to slowly waste time with her tonight. Come, drink some more water. I'll call a doctor. He gently helped Ning Jing sit up. As soon as Ning Jing sat down, she immediately fell to the side and curled up in pain. Her acting was so good. Tang Li decided to accompany her to the end. Long Fei had already ordered him to settle Ning Jing within a year. He decided to use warm tactics to torment this slut. Tang Li quickly pulled Ning Jing up. Jing, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me, okay? Ning Jing was in so much pain that she felt weak all over. She couldn't help but collapse into Tang Li's arms. The warmth in Tang Li's arms immediately dispersed the coldness in her body. However, she was not greedy. She gritted her teeth and quickly struggled out. Lying in the bedding, she held her stomach tightly and did not say a word. Wait, I'll call the doctor right away. When Tang Li opened the door and came out, he saw Aunt Shuang pacing back and forth in the courtyard. Tang, Aunt, son-in-law. Aunt Shuang was still calm. Madame Tang wondered if Tang Li was too pretentious. Why was he still pretending here? She knew her son best. Other than Long Fei, when had this boy ever said the word beg so easily? Let's go and take a look. Hurry. Han Yunqi made a prompt decision. Long Fei stopped her and was about to remind her when Han Yunqi said, Don't worry, I won't go in. Although Ning Jing only brought a servant, Annie Shuang, with her, they still had to be careful to avoid exposing their identities. She told Tang Li, hurry up and find a doctor to check on her and tell me her pulse. Also, collect the blood she vomited and give it to me as soon as possible. I'll wait outside the courtyard. Tang Li immediately went to do it. Long Fei personally rushed over with Han Yunqi. At this juncture, Ning Jing couldn't die, especially not in the Tang sect. Soon, Tang Li collected the black blood and gave it to Han Yunqi. He also told her about the doctor's diagnosis. His hands trembled slightly as he held the plate of black blood. Han Yunqi didn't even activate the detoxification system. She could tell at a glance that the poison in the blood was Ghost Night Out. She instantly understood what was going on. Taking this poison would cause slight abdominal pain for 3 consecutive nights. After that, the body would need to recuperate for a month. This must be Ning Jing's trick. She wanted to avoid the wedding night, and also wanted to avoid her mother-in-law making things difficult for her. This was a good idea. Unfortunately, she wasn't very lucky. Fragrances and pollen were the most taboo things for those who had taken the Night of Ghosts poison. Once they encountered these two things and exceeded a certain amount, the poison would multiply, leading to true poisoning. It would cause severe abdominal cramps and even affect normal breathing. Tang Li's room was full of flowers, and they were all fresh. It would be strange if she wasn't poisoned. Fortunately, Tang Li was by her side and discovered it in time. Otherwise, this girl might really die on her wedding day. Han Yunqi quickly made the antidote and gave it to Tang Li. Tang Li took it and ran back. Han Yunqi was in disbelief. She muttered to herself, "Why are you in such a hurry? What happened?" Long Feiyi asked. Han Yunqi told him the truth. Long Feiyi didn't ask anything else. He only asked, "His room is full of flowers?" "Yes, roses and Ningjing's favorite daisies." "Haha, I wanted to give Ningjing a surprise. I didn't expect that I would almost kill her." Han Yunqi laughed. "Is this what you mean by suppressing first and then showing off later?" Long Feiyi asked again. It was rare for him to be interested in this kind of thing. It's to coax a girl. Let her be disappointed first, then give her a surprise. No matter how hard-hearted she is, she will be more or less touched. Han Yunqi laughed. Long Feiyi nodded thoughtfully. "What about you?" Chapter 681. It turned out that suppressing her feelings first was a way to make a girl happy and touched. This was the first time Long Feiyi had heard of such a thing, and it was also the first time he cared about such a thing. Was this trick effective on Han Yunqi? Han Yunqi didn't expect Long Feiyi to suddenly ask such a question. She looked at him, and her mind was a little blank. She didn't know how to answer for a moment. Long Fei slowly drew closer and stared at her. He seemed interested and patient, but also impatient and persistent in his desire for an answer. A familiar aura slowly approached. Han Yunqi subconsciously leaned back, wanting to put some distance between them. She didn't reject this man's approach, but his aura was too strong. If he was too close, she would have difficulty breathing, her heart would race, and she would be inexplicably nervous. Long Feiyi didn't rush her. His tall body leaned forward as she leaned back. Han Yunqi hadn't seen him at such a close distance and looked into his eyes for a long time. These deep eyes weren't as cold and sharp as usual, but they were still bottomless. Han Yunqi clearly knew that she would be addicted, but she still couldn't help but look into his eyes. Long Feiyi, looking at your eyes at such a close distance, can I see into your heart? Long Feiyi, how many secrets are hidden in your heart? Time stood still, and everything seemed to be silent. The two of them stared at each other. He was in her eyes, and she was in his eyes. Suddenly, Han Yunqi lost her balance and instantly fell back. Long Feiyi grabbed her waist. However, he didn't pick her up. Instead, he leaned in front of her and finally said, "What about you? What do you like?" Han Yunqi had just been frightened and had already recovered from her intoxication. "What do you mean? Like what?" She played dumb. "What flowers do you like?" Long Feiyi asked seriously. "Are you going to give me one?" Han Yunqi smiled. Had Long Feiyi ever given her flowers? What about the plum blossoms in the Jiangnan Plum Blossom Sea? If he could count the flowers, then this guy was truly unprecedented in the past and would never be surpassed in the future. At most, other people would give him 999 roses. The plum trees in his sea of plum blossoms in Jiangnan were more than 999. If one were to count the number of flowers, it was impossible to count how many there were. Long Feiyi actually didn't need anyone to teach him how to give things, because no one could teach him how to be so generous. Seeing Han Yunqi smile, Long Feiyi seemed a little unhappy. He immediately ended the topic of flowers, but did not end the previous topic. He asked again, "What do you like?" He furrowed his brows and insisted on an answer. "I like it." Han Yunqi thought about it seriously. "I like." She thought for a long time while he waited patiently. Finally, she asked, "Long Feiyi, will you give me whatever I like?" "Yes," he answered without thinking. "Then listen carefully." Han Yunqi smiled mysteriously. She was leaning back, and all her strength was on his arm. She actually hooked her finger, indicating for him to come closer. She was almost leaning back at a 90-degree angle. If Long Fei got any closer, the two of them would definitely fall together. Long Fei suddenly scooped her up and pushed her into his arms. He tilted his head and put his ear close to hers. "Say it. I like it." Han Yunshi kept him in suspense again. She smiled faintly. "I like it, Long Fei's patience seemed to have no limit in front of this woman. "I like Long Fei. Can you give him to me?" Han Yunshi finally gave an answer. Although it wasn't her first time confessing, her ears were still a little hot. Long Fei stared blankly. Han Yunshi gently pinched his good-looking chin and smiled. "You have to keep your word. You can't go back on it." Long Fei allowed her to play with his chin as he asked indifferently, "Wasn't this prince yours long ago? When did you lose this prince, and now you want to go back?" She had once said that she wanted all of him. Looking at Long Fei's gentle gaze, Han Yunshi felt a little unreal. She had never thought that this man could say such nice and gentle words of love. She was just joking. Seeing that he was still so serious, she suddenly stopped laughing. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but she actually saw a trace of sadness in his gentle eyes. Sadness? She had always thought that this man wouldn't have such emotions. His heart was stronger than his sword skills, so how could he be hurt? Who could hurt him? Between the two of them, wasn't she the one who had been hurt all these years? At most, he was angry. She rose from his embrace and stood up straight, looking at him seriously. She wanted to see the person in front of her clearly. She was really afraid that this was all a dream. "Long Fei, can you say that one more time? When did you lose this prince?" "Now." "No, the one before that. Say it one more time." She was delighted, bold, and greedy. "Idiot." Long Fei laughed. Han Yunshi was a little angry. She allowed him to laugh, but Long Fei gently embraced her and whispered by her ear, "Han Yunshi, this prince has long been yours." Her smile was as red as the clouds, blooming on her face. Her heart was filled with joy as her face and ears turned red. His voice was so gentle that it melted her heart. "Long Fei, no need to coax me, no need to restrain me, no need to lift me up. As long as you show me your tenderness, Yunshi's heart of stone will melt." "Say it one more time," she stubbornly demanded. She was greedy. "Han Yunshi, this prince has long been yours. Yours alone." His hot breath blew by her ear. Han Yunshi was immersed in happiness when he said domineeringly, "Han Yunshi, you can only have this prince." As soon as he finished speaking, he nibbled on her earlobe and kissed his way down her jade neck. On the Western Front, as Long Fei predicted, Western Zhou's emperor accepted Chu Tiannin's surrender and blamed Empress Shui's death on Ningqing and Chu Qingge. The emperor even sent more troops to Chu Tiannin, who had the best understanding of the western regions and ample experience in battle. Tonight, he destroyed one of Ningqing's elite troops. On the Eastern Front, Long Tianma might have no experience in battle, but General Mu's estate wasn't easy to deal with. Despite their limited military strength, Great General Mu had arranged a good situation. Mu Qingwu was currently on his way to the front lines. With General Mu's arrangements and Mu Qingwu's personal command, Long Tianma's victory was guaranteed. "Your Highness, Long Tianma really got lucky this time," Chu Shifeng said unhappily. "We shouldn't have left Long Tianma alive in the first place. If they'd killed Long Tianma, the Tianan territories would be under His Highness Duke of Qin's control right now. His Highness Duke of Qin would be the one asking for profits instead of losses. After all, His Highness Duke of Qin still held the title of Tianning Qin Wang. It was perfectly justified for him to deal with Ningqing and Chu Qingge. Do you think the Mu family is so easy to deal with?" Long Fei asked. "We should have stopped Mu Luiyue from marrying into the Mu estate," Chu Shifeng muttered to himself. Chu Shifeng muttered to himself as he brought up the matter. Moreover, Mu Qingwu joined the Eastern Palace back then because he wanted to investigate the disaster relief grain. "Mu Qingwu, the Mu clan isn't under his control," Long Fei said. Mu Qingwu had pretended to rely on the Eastern Palace for the sake of his hot-bloodedness, for the sake of the country and its people. He wanted to uncover evidence of the imperial uncle's embezzlement of relief grain. But who knew that great General Mu would actually side with Long Tianma for the sake of Mu Luiyue? Whether it was Long Tianma or Mu Qingwu, Long Fei didn't think much of either of them. He only feared General Mu. The situation in the western regions was growing more and more chaotic. That old fox had managed to convince Long Tianma to wait until now to send out his troops. It was a skill of his own. Your Highness, but Chu Shifeng didn't understand. But Long Fei only said coldly, as long as General Mu is around, don't try to scheme against Tian. Your Highness, are we really afraid of General Mu's estate? Chu Shifeng wasn't convinced. Leaving aside other forces, the Bailey army was strong enough to fight against General Mu's estate. How could Long Fei really be afraid? He lazily sat on the warm couch and casually said, in this world, besides the Chu army and the Mu army, who else knows the Northern Li's cavalry better? Long Fei had said during Tianning's civil unrest that Tianning and Tian'an were meant to defend against Northern Li's cavalry. The South Central region was a land of fish and rice, a rich and fertile land. It was also the most densely populated area, so he would never allow the flames of war to spread there. This time, he'd accepted Chu Tianning's surrender and kept the Chu clan troops for more than just dealing with Ningjing. Go make preparations. We'll set out for South Ning tomorrow, Long Fei ordered. Your Highness is leaving Yaoshui? Chu Shifeng was astonished. Wasn't it too early to leave Yaoshui now? After all, the war had only just begun. There were bound to be variables. As long as Northern Li doesn't make a move, the three countries in the west won't be affected. Although Ningchang was being attacked from two sides, he had enough troops and frightening amounts of wealth. He wouldn't lose much in a year and a half. Long Fei figured that the situation in the west would continue for another 2 to 3 years. His main concern was still Northern Li. He had to return to South Ning and the Bailey army to figure out the situation there. Moreover, Bailey Yuanlong had sent him a few letters saying that the noble families in the South Central regions were making a big fuss. It was time for him to go back and suppress their arrogance. The central regions of Cloud Realm continent were home to the noble families, the eastern regions were home to the merchants, and the western regions were home to the Jianghu. The so-called noble families were noble clans that passed down generations of official titles. There were plenty of such families in the South Central regions, but they were far away from the emperor. Their influence grew stronger and stronger until the commander-in-chief's estate rose to prominence. More than a year had passed, but the commander-in-chief's estate hadn't given them any benefits. How could they let the matter rest? If they stirred up chaos in Western Zhou, Tianning, and Tian'an, the commander-in-chief's estate couldn't afford any internal strife. Besides these two matters, Long Fei still had to go back and check the accounts of his various businesses. He also had to ask Gu about the situation with the perplexing butterfly illusion. In any case, Long Fei was extremely busy. But that wasn't what he was most concerned about. Instead, he wanted to go to Celestial Mountain. There were many unknowns on this trip, so he had to take care of all the matters at hand to prevent any unexpected events. After all, he was going to face a lot of trouble on this trip. He didn't want to run into any more trouble. Long Fei had made plenty of preparations. Even the change of ownership of the Tang clan and Tang Li's ascension to the throne were all part of his plans. Aunt Ru hadn't colluded with Duanmu Yao, but he'd still prepared a trap for her to jump into. He'd put in a lot of thought and effort, but how many people understood him? Even his closest retainer, Chu Shifeng, couldn't make sense of it. For the first time, she felt that this guy's babbling didn't annoy her that much. Soon, Tang Li sat back down and leaned against the side to continue his nap. Ning Jing waited for a long time. When she was sure that he had really fallen asleep, she carefully opened her eyes. She lay there, looking at the flowers and looking at him. She didn't know how long she had been looking at them, and she didn't know how she fell asleep in the end. The next day, when she woke up, Tang Li was already gone. Long Fei and Han Yunxi were about to leave, and Tang Li had gone to send them off. Other than Han Yunxi, Tang Li was the first to know that Long Fei was going to Tianshan. It was already April, and he knew that Long Fei Yi wouldn't stay in Ningnan for too long. In the past, it took 4 years to raise a horse into a war horse, 3 years to raise it, and half a year to train it. With this fodder, even a newborn would only need 2 years. Thus, the Northern Dynasty's emperors sent people to secretly negotiate with the Yunnan Trade Consortium about the sale of war horses. At the same time, they secretly purchased 2-year-old horses from herdsmen and used fodder to raise them for a few months before they could be used as war horses. Currently, Cloud Realm Trade Consortium hadn't made any progress. They did buy some from the herdsmen, but it wasn't enough. Even when the Northern Dynasty's emperors were out on patrol, they didn't forget to bring along a strategic map. A large leather map was spread out on the table. The Northern Dynasty's emperors were currently pointing out the location of Fenglin Prefecture as they discussed the battle with Bai Yanqing. After going around in circles, General Chu actually went back to Western Zhou. The Northern Dynasty's emperors sighed with emotion. What a pity! What a pity! If the 3 horse carriages hadn't been so badly damaged, his cavalry would have long crossed the 3-way battlefield and attacked Western Zhou and Tianning. He never expected that Tianning would fall into civil strife after it was split in 2, and the situation in the west would turn out like this. This time, Northern Li had truly missed a golden opportunity. Your Majesty, have you heard of a story from Tianning? Bai Yanqing stroked his beard with a faint smile. He was dressed in long gray robes and looked calm and composed, like an otherworldly expert who was mysterious beneath his facade. What story? The Northern Dynasty's emperors asked. Misfortune may be a blessing in disguise. After Bai Yanqing finished speaking, Jun Yixie explained to the Northern Dynasty's emperors in detail. Your Majesty, the chaos between the 3 countries will last for a long time. Your Majesty still has a chance. Once the war horses are ready, you can send your troops south and reap the benefits. With the number of war horses we have now, we might not even have a chance of victory in 2 years. Jin won't fight a battle without confidence. Don't forget that the Duke of Qin's navy is still eyeing us from the Eastern Sea. Without a doubt, the Northern Dynasty's emperor's greatest enemy was Long Fei Yi. Your Majesty, is this because you don't trust the old man? Bai Yanqing laughed coldly. Compared to Jun Yixie's respect, Bai Yanqing wasn't humble in front of the Northern Dynasty's emperors. Neither was his aura weak. Bai Yanqing, how do you expect Jun to trust you? Cloud Realm Continent's most fertile lands are all in the Duke of Qin's hands. It's already summer in the south, so harvest season will arrive in a few months. The flames of war won't reach there. When the time comes, Western Zhou and Tian will have no choice but to transfer grain from his hands. He won't miss out on Ning Cheng's lands. The Northern Dynasty's emperors said coldly. Western Zhou and Tianning's lands were barren to begin with, so grain production was limited. Now that the flames of war had begun, almost all farming and animal husbandry had stopped. Although Tian'an wasn't the main battlefield and its agriculture was well developed, all of its men had gone to war. Fewer people were left to do farm work, which would greatly reduce grain production. Once the grain reserves were used up, both sides would have to buy grain from outside. This was the perfect time for the South Central region's commander-in-chief's estate to reap the spoils of war. Moreover, Long Fei Yi's style wasn't just for grain. It was very likely that he'd take advantage of the situation to send out his troops and divide up Tianning's lands with Western Zhou and Tian'an. The Northern Dynasty's emperors spoke the truth, but Bai Yanqing didn't take it to heart. Smiling, he said, Your Majesty, please believe the old man. This autumn will be an eventful one for the Duke of Qin. As long as the Crown Prince can quickly increase the number of horses, the old man's promise to Your Majesty will come true very soon. Seeing the Northern Dynasty's emperors hesitate, Bai Yanqing added, Your Majesty trusted the old man in the past. If you don't believe him now, the old man will be disappointed. Bai Yanqing's eyes were like a mysterious lake that had lain dormant for thousands of years. Nothing could disturb it. The Northern Dynasty's emperors recalled Bai Yanqing's promise. He'd said that the 7 noble families, the Wind and Black clans, would swear fealty to the Northernly imperial family and unite Cloud Realm Continent together. Because of this promise, the Northern Dynasty's emperors had conferred upon Jun Yixie the title of Duke of Kong and granted him unlimited power. Bai Yanqing was an honored guest of honor and treated him with limitless respect. The Northern Dynasty's emperors stared at Bai Yanqing for a long time before coming to a decision. Someone come, send orders to the second imperial prince to cross the snowy mountains and recruit soldiers and horses. Jin will give him 3 months. If he doesn't bring back the horses, then he doesn't need to come back. Beyond Northern Li's lofty snowy mountains was the northernmost part of Cloud Realm continent. It was also the last piece of undeveloped land, home to a tribe of primitive slaves called the Wintercrow clan. 3 years ago, the Northern Dynasty's emperors had sent out envoys to bypass the snowy mountains and reach the Wintercrow clan for the first time. There, they discovered the best breed of horses, the Wintercrow horses. Over the past 3 years, Northernly had already built a winding mountain path that allowed them to reach the Wintercrow clan in a short time. However, the Wintercrow clan was fierce and untrustworthy, making it difficult to communicate with them. Even a small business deal with them could put one's life in danger, much less a major horse trade. Northernly had sent out 10 envoys in total, but none of them had returned. Thus, the Northern Dynasty's emperors hadn't held out much hope. But now that the 3 nations were at war, he had no choice but to try. If Bai Yanqing was confident he could keep the Long Fei Yi in check, then he could catch them off guard when autumn came and the 3 nations ran out of food supplies. No matter what, he had to have enough war horses in reserve. A crafty look flashed past Bai Yanqing's eyes before he crossed his arms and said, "I wish His Second Highness good luck. Imperial Father, this son is willing to go as well to protect the second Imperial Prince." Jun Yixie volunteered himself. The Northern Dynasty's emperors looked at him hesitantly. To the readers, welcome to Jin Mo's public WeChat account, Jimomo 2015. There's a small drama, character chronicles, and the heavenly concubine's sweet words to read. Chapter 684. This trip to the Wintercrow clan would be fraught with danger. However, the Northern Dynasty's emperors weren't worried about Jun Yixie's safety, but who would take over the horse farms and snow mountains once Jun Yixie was gone. If Jun Yixie died in the Wintercrow clan, then who would get the farms and snow mountains? The Crown Prince had always been in charge of recruiting soldiers and buying horses, but the Northern Dynasty's emperors had sent the second Imperial Prince this time precisely because they didn't want the Crown Prince to take any risks. A country couldn't go a day without a ruler or heir apparent. With the second Imperial Prince and Jun Yixie going, it was inevitable that the horse farms and snow mountains would fall into the Crown Prince's hands. The Northern Dynasty's emperors valued the Crown Prince, but didn't want him to have too much power. After all, Crown Prince Long Tianma had set up his own house to serve as a warning. In the midst of her hesitation, Bai Yanqing spoke up. The second Imperial Prince might not be able to handle this. If Yixie goes, old man won't have to worry. The barbarians are afraid of supernatural powers, so Yixie's poison skills should be enough to deal with them. The Wintercrow clan was extremely backward, especially when it came to medicine. Many of their incurable illnesses were attributed to supernatural beings. If Jun Yixie used his poison skills there, he might even be worshipped as a god. In the Wintercrow clan, anyone who was worshipped as a god could order them around as they pleased. Poison skills, that's a good idea. Beloved subject, why didn't you say so earlier? The Northern Dynasty's emperors suddenly realized. I just thought of it, Bai Yanqing explained. Just like that, the Northern Dynasty's emperors agreed. After Bai Yanqing and his disciple left the palace, Bai Yanqing instructed in a low voice, find someone to tell the Crown Prince the news in a few days. He won't miss out on a chance to fight for merits. Jun Yixie's lips curved up in a ruthless smile. Master is wise and brilliant. This disciple definitely won't disappoint you. No matter who it was, as long as they could bring back the horses, they would be considered meritorious and would be able to directly take charge of the warhorse warehouse. The Crown Prince would not easily give this opportunity to the second prince. Jun Yixie had plenty of ways to lure the Crown Prince to the Wintercrow clan. Once he was there, he would be able to decide how the Crown Prince and the second prince died. Once the Northern Dynasty's emperors lost the Crown Prince and the second prince, It was as if they had lost their left and right arms. Even if they supported another prince, they would not be able to fight against him in a short period of time. In the future, when the Northern Dynasty's emperors grow old, it would be hard to say who would take control of Northern Li. Previously, Junixia had never understood why his master wanted him to keep an eye on the internal affairs of Northern Li and not be distracted by interfering with external affairs. Now, he was more or less obvious. If he did not lose to Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, perhaps he would be more relied on by the Northern Dynasty's emperors. His master had set up a big picture, but the most important thing was to control Northern Li. Bai Qingyan and Junixia returned to their own tents before Bai Qingyan spoke up. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium is the biggest variable. The grain and horses in their hands can't be underestimated. Master, just what is the relationship between the Ning clan and Cloud Realm Trade Consortium? In the past, Cloud Realm Trade Consortium sold quite a few redcoat cannons to the Ning clan during their war with Western Zhou, Junixia reminded. Bai Yanqing shook his head. There's definitely something fishy going on. Also, Ning Jing actually married into the Tang clan. Because of her marriage, the plans to grow medicine in the Snow Mountains were all put on hold. What do they have to do with the Tang clan? Junixia muttered to himself. You don't need to worry about that for now. Make your preparations well, and be careful when you go to the Wintercrow clan, Bai Yanqing instructed. Don't worry, master. It's just a trivial matter. Junixia was as confident as ever. At this moment, Junixia's junior sister and Bai Yanqing's adopted daughter, Bai Yuqiao, walked in. Go and make your preparations. We'll set out tomorrow for a trip back to Imperial City. Bai Yanqing waved his hand, clearly shooing them away. Junixia didn't want to leave so soon. Master, about Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi, do your part well? Bai Yanqing was unhappy. Junixia was both unsatisfied and curious. His main concern was how his master was going to deal with Long Fei Yi and Han Yunxi. What he didn't understand the most was why his master had warned him not to touch Han Yunxi so casually. Just what kind of medicine was he selling? Every time he asked, his master would either change the topic or chase him away. He had endured it for a long time. Master, do we still have secrets between us? His usually cold and insufferably arrogant eyes were filled with stubbornness and even a hint of grievance. Are you suspecting your master? Bai Yanqing's face fell. Bai Yuqiao silently retreated to the side. Seeing her usually arrogant senior brother being as stubborn as a child, she felt her heart ache. She knew all of her master's plans and had wanted to secretly tell him several times, but she didn't have the courage. That's not it. Since master doesn't want your disciple to interfere, your disciple will obey. Junixia finished speaking and turned to leave. When he reached the door, Bai Qingyan said coldly, You've already been defeated by a woman over and over again. What right do you have to interfere? Don't worry. Master will avenge you for the humiliation Long Fei Yi gave you. Don't be anxious. Hearing this, Junixia's dim eyes immediately lit up. He turned and respectfully bowed. Thank you, master. Seeing this, Bai Yuqiao felt extremely helpless. She knew that her senior brother must have been too happy and didn't notice that master only mentioned Long Fei Yi and not Han Yunxi. What her senior brother wanted the most was to get revenge on Han Yunxi. After all, he lost every time because of Han Yunxi. What are you still standing there for? Bai Qingyan's stern voice broke Bai Yuqiao's train of thought. She quickly ran over and handed over a secret missive. Master, the City of Daughters sent this over at top speed. The City of Daughters had long been under Bai Yanqing's control. Even Junixia didn't know about this. Bai Yanqing opened it and suddenly laughed. As expected, the old man guessed correctly. Bai Yuqiao was curious but didn't dare to ask. Only when Bai Yanqing threw the letter on the table did she catch a glimpse of the words inside. She was extremely shocked. The letter said that the Tian and country's Empress Dowager had offered an extremely high price for the #1 expert in the City of Daughters. The city lord, Madame Longyu, had personally taken action to kidnap a person. Seeing that person's name, Bai Yuqiao was shocked. Master, it seems like you guessed correctly. Bai Yanqing's eyes narrowed, revealing a terrifying killing intent. It must be him. Bai Yuqiao was most afraid of her master's bloodthirsty appearance. He didn't have his usual elegance and calmness. He was like a dark avenger. Bai Yuqiao didn't know where her master's hatred came from. She only hoped that her master would treat her senior brother well and not let him become a tool for his revenge. "How's the investigation of the mermaid clan?" Bai Yanqing asked again. "It's still under investigation. The mermaids in the water are not difficult to deal with, but those on land are troublesome. Your disciple will make good use of the time," Bai Yuqiao said seriously. "Very good, if this matter is settled. Master will definitely tell you where your sister is." Bai Yanqing was in a good mood. "Go personally to the City of Daughters and tell Long Yu that no matter what, accept this deal." Bai Yuqiao received the order and left. When she reached the entrance of the tent, she exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. Her small hand covered her chest, feeling her wildly beating heart. Master hadn't mentioned her sister for many years. She was adopted by Master and always thought that she was an orphan. However, many years ago, Master accidentally mentioned that she had a sister with eyes as big as hers. Master said that he only knew that much, but she knew that Master wasn't telling the truth. She knew Master better than her senior brother. "Little sister," Bai Yuqiao muffled her mouth. Although she was overjoyed, her eyes were wet. She hadn't cried in a long, long time. Little sister, where is she? Was this what it felt like to have family? She suddenly felt like she wasn't so lonely anymore. Northernly seemed peaceful, but there were huge movements. Who knew if Long Fei Yi would be able to sense them in the short span of a month? Yes, 1 month. May was the best season to climb Celestial Mountain. The mountain paths were easy to traverse, and the weather was just right. Besides taking care of matters in South Ning, they could reach the foot of the mountain by the end of the month. They were in a hurry from Reclining Dragon Range to South Ning Prefecture, but just as they were about to enter South Ning Prefecture's borders, a guard came with bad news. Even though it was the middle of the night, Chu Shifeng didn't hesitate to wake Long Fei Yi. "Your Highness, something big's happened. Grand Concubine Yi's gone." Long Fei Yi's eyes flew open. Han Yunqi was startled awake as well. "What do you mean?" Long Fei Yi asked coldly. "This evening, a servant girl went to deliver food, but she was already gone. All of the shadow guards in the ancestral hall were killed with sword wounds. Judging from the scene, they were probably robbed. The attackers' martial arts were extremely high," Chu Shifeng reported. "Are there any other clues?" Long Fei Yi was still calm, but this was no small matter. During the chaos in Tianning's capital, Grand Concubine Yi had been rescued by the Shadow Guards and sent to South Ning Prefecture. After the Duke of Qin's estate was built, Grand Concubine Yi had been living in the ancestral hall of the estate. She spent her days chanting scriptures and worshipping Buddha until she faded out of the public eye. Grand Concubine Yi wasn't just an old imperial concubine. Although she wasn't clear on Long Fei Yi's origins, she knew Long Fei Yi wasn't Emperor Tianhui's son. That fact alone was enough to threaten Long Fei Yi. Thus, Long Fei Yi hadn't agreed when she asked to become a nun at the nunnery. Instead, he'd placed her under house arrest in the ancestral hall and sent 3 groups of shadow guard to guard the place. Over the past year, she'd been safe and sound. Who knew that something would happen now? What were the kidnappers' motives? None at the moment. "Your Highness, should this subordinate hurry back first?" Chu Shifeng was very anxious. Before Long Fei Yi could reply, Han Yunqi said, "We'll go back together. If the kidnappers aren't trying to use Grand Concubine to threaten us, then they must be suspecting your Highness's identity." "I'm afraid it's the latter." Long Fei Yi's eyes flashed sinisterly. Long Tianma, Emperor Tianhui and Empress Dowager Chun had both suspected this in the past. They'd even hired assassins from the City of Assassins to fight over Mama Su. Without any other clues, Long Tianma was the prime suspect. Long Tianma had fled to the west, but Empress Dowager Chun and the imperial uncle's estate had all stayed behind in Tian and to follow him. Besides Emperor Tianhui, the only other person who knew was Empress Dowager Chen, the current Empress Dowager of Tiana. That very night, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi abandoned their carriage and rode with Chu Shifeng back to South Ning Prefecture. Gue Mama had served Grand Concubine Yi for years and was loyal and devoted. Even if she wanted to betray her, she wouldn't have waited until now. Have the decorations here been touched? Long Fei Yi asked again. Gue Momo looked around and was certain. Your Highness Duke of Qin, nothing has been touched in the temple hall. Chu Shifeng added, Your Highness, this subordinate has checked everything inside and out. The kidnappers should have only gone to the temple hall. In other words, even Imperial Concubine Dowager didn't sense the movements outside? Long Fei Yi wanted to confirm this point. If Grand Concubine had sensed the movements outside and knew there were assassins, she would have at least called for help. Even if she didn't, there would have been signs of a struggle. To kill 100 shadow guards in the time it took to cook a bowl of noodles without attracting the attention of Grand Concubine Yi in the temple hall meant that there were few people in Cloud Realm continent with such skills. Your Highness, could it have been Songqiuzi? Chu Shifeng asked doubtfully. Why would he kidnap Grand Concubine Dowager for no reason at all? Han Yunqi asked, but Chu Shifeng could only shake his head. I can only say that he's a suspect. There are probably only 6 people in the world with such skills. Which 6? Han Yunqi was curious. She knew very little about the martial arts world's experts. Tianshan Kenzo, Songqiuzi, City of Daughters City Lord Lady Lungyu, Carefree City's City Lord Qi Zonglin, and the Tang clan's Tang Zijin, Chu Shifeng replied. And the last one? Han Yunqi asked next. It's His Highness Duke of Qin himself? Chu Shifeng felt helpless. Actually, if Gu Beiyue's martial arts hadn't been crippled and Chu Yuni hadn't gone blind, the two of them would be on the list as well. Both His Highness Duke of Qin and Tang Zijin could be eliminated, leaving only Songqiuzi, Lady Lungyu, and Qi Zonglin as the biggest suspects. Unfortunately, all 3 of them used swords. The shadow guards had all been killed with a single slash to the throat. It was impossible to tell what kind of sword skills the culprit had used, and the wounds were very ordinary. There was nothing special about the sword, either. Thus, it was impossible to eliminate the 3 suspects. Of course, it wasn't certain that the culprit was one of the 3, but they were the biggest suspects. If it was Songqiuzi, then it'd be fine. But if it was Lady Lungyu or Qi Zonglin, then things would get even more complicated. The City of Daughters and Carefree City were both paid to do business. If the culprit really was one of the 2 city lords' flowers, then they'd have to find out who hired them. Your Highness, we should have silenced them ages ago, Chu Shifeng muttered. He'd never had a good impression of Grand Concubine Yi, an old woman who coveted glory and was afraid of death. Long Fei Yi was cruel and heartless. He placed Grand Concubine Yi under house arrest and forbade her from leaving the ancestral hall. He refused to let her see Murong Wanru, but he wasn't so heartless as to kill his own foster mother. In the end, he'd called Grand Concubine Yi Mufei for over a decade. In the midst of his silence, news from Tianan City arrived. Murong Wanru was still at Marquis Pingbei's estate, lying there perfectly fine without any abnormalities. Long Fei Yi thought it over before he said coldly, Chu Shifeng, go personally and set up an ambush. Murong Wanru had teamed up with Empress Dowager Li to kill Grand Concubine Yi and frame Han Yunqi, but ended up suffering the consequences of her own actions. She'd been poisoned and left in a vegetative state. She'd always assumed that Han Yunqi's monthly supply of medicine was enough to keep her alive. As long as Murong Wanru hadn't fallen into the kidnapper's hands, Grand Concubine Yi would have some scruples. Also, arrange for people to ask around in the City of Daughters and Carefree City. Long Fei Yi added. This subordinate understands. I'll do it immediately. Chu Shifeng obeyed and left. You don't seem to suspect Songqiuzi, Han Yunqi remarked. Long Fei Yi nodded. Songqiuzi didn't have enough motives. Moreover, the man wouldn't go so far as to threaten him by kidnapping Grand Concubine Yi. News of his plans to ascend Celestial Mountain hadn't spread, so Songqiuzi wouldn't be on guard against him. Right now, Songqiuzi's biggest headache should be his engagement with the Tang clan. He wasn't stupid enough to make both the Tang clan and Cloud Realm Trade Consortium his enemy, so he could only find a way out for himself. If the culprit is after your birth, then I'm afraid there won't be any news of Grand Concubine Yi. If not, Han Yunqi's eyes flickered with a complicated look. Let's just wait for the ransom letter to come to our door. Although the situation was serious, Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi could only wait and see how things developed. Take care of the corpses and make arrangements for the funeral. Don't talk about the ancestral hall again. Long Fei Yi instructed the guards before leaving the ancestral hall with Han Yunqi. Hand in hand, they walked along the quiet paths of the Duke of Qin's estate. Soon enough, they reached the hibiscus courtyard and walked up the wooden winding corridor. South Ning Prefecture's Duke of Qin's estate was exactly the same as the original one. Walking here, Han Yunqi felt as if she'd returned to the Duke of Qin's estate 2 years ago in Tianning's capital city. 2 years ago, they'd often walked the long corridors together, one in front of the other. Today, he was holding her hand while she walked shoulder to shoulder with him. Everyone said that the affairs of the world were hard to predict, but people were the hardest to predict. Once again, they reached a fork in the road. To the right was his sleeping quarters, while to the left was her leisurely cloud pavilion. He didn't stop to accompany her all the way to her room. In the middle of the night, the only light on was in the courtyard. The entire building was shrouded in darkness. Han Yunqi assumed that Zhao Mama and the rest had all gone to bed, but she heard sobbing as soon as she reached the courtyard gates. Someone was crying. "Who is it?" Han Yunqi asked in a low voice. Long Fei Yi didn't speak, but kicked the door open. Grand Concubine Yi's kidnapping proved that the Duke of Qin's estate wasn't completely safe. "Who is it?" Han Yunqi recognized the voice as Bailey Mingxiang's. Very soon, Bailey Mingxiang walked out from the corner of the room. As soon as she saw Long Fei Yi and Han Yunqi, she gave a start. By the time she recovered her senses, Han Yunqi had already walked in front of her. "Mingxiang, what's wrong? Who bullied you?" Han Yunqi asked seriously. Although there wasn't enough light, she could still see that Bailey Mingxiang's eyes were swollen from crying. Heaven knows how long she'd been crying. Before Bailey Mingxiang could reply, Long Fei Yi said to Han Yunqi in a cold voice, "Rest early. Tomorrow we'll make a trip to the South Central Region's Commander-in-Chief's estate." So speaking, he turned to leave. At the door, he called for a guard and ordered in a low voice, "Increase the defenses, especially around the hibiscus courtyard." Bailey Mingxiang hung her head, her hands clenched into fists. She told herself not to look anymore. She was lucky enough to hear his voice, so she couldn't look anymore. But in the end, she couldn't help but lift her head. Unfortunately, his cold figure had long disappeared from sight. Seeing esteemed Wang Fei staring at her, she quickly averted her eyes. "Esteemed Wang Fei, when did you come back? Who bullied you?" Han Yunqi asked unhappily. "How long have you been crying? Don't you want your eyes anymore?" Bailey Mingxiang finally realized her loss of self-control and hastily wiped away her tears. "No, I just missed my mother. Today's the anniversary of her death." "Really?" Han Yunqi asked doubtfully. "Did you suffer grievances at Pill Fiend Pharmacy? Or did Xiao Yu do something to you?" Han Yunqi asked again. That stinky girl, Su Xiaoyu, had a vicious mouth. It wasn't as if she hadn't made things difficult for Bailey Mingxiang before. No. Bailey Mingxiang immediately denied it. "Esteemed Wang Fei, Xiao Yu is still a child. She wouldn't make me cry. I really do miss my mother." In reality, Su Xiaoyu had humiliated her again tonight and chased her away. Ever since Gu Beiwei left South Ning, Su Xiaoyu had caused her no small amount of trouble. Su Xiaoyu was indeed a child, but she wasn't an ordinary child. In just a few short months, Su Xiaoyu had doused her with cold water, caught a snake to scare her, put dead rats on her bed, and even tripped her several times. She could endure and forget about it, but that little girl's mouth was truly too vicious. She could humiliate someone to death with just her mouth. Although she had been raised in a boudoir since she was young, she still wouldn't be bullied to this extent by a child. Unfortunately, Su Xiaoyu had something on her. Han Yunqi thought that no matter how bad Bailey Mingxiang was, it was impossible for that little girl, Su Xiaoyu, to bully her to this extent. She believed in Bailey Mingxiang. At this time, Su Xiaoyu suddenly opened the door and came out. Chapter 686. When Su Xiaoyu opened the door, she was stunned for a moment before she cried out in surprise, "Master!" Zhao Mama and Bailey Mingxiang both called Han Yunxi, Her Highness the Princess Consort. Su Xiaoyu used to call her that as well, but one day after she lost her memory, she suddenly stopped calling Han Yunxi, Her Highness the Princess Consort, and started calling her Master. She didn't care about Han Yunxi's identity. She only knew that Han Yunxi was her savior. She rushed out in disbelief and circled around Han Yunxi, sizing her up from head to toe. "Master, you're finally back? You've lost a lot of weight." Her tone, expression, and gaze didn't match her age at all. She was so mature that she could compete with Zhao Mama. Fortunately, she didn't have Zhao Mama's nagging, and she didn't know how to make chicken soup. "You're the one who's lost a lot of weight." If the Long Fei heard this, Zhao Mama's stew would probably be busy again. Han Yunxi knocked Su Xiaoyu's forehead. "Did you do anything bad during this time?" Su Xiaoyu blinked her large eyes and was about to answer when she suddenly exclaimed, "Bailey Mingxiang, are you crying? Although the masters are back, do you have to be this excited?" Bailey Mingxiang knew that this girl was putting on an act and that her words were full of thorns. She smiled and took advantage of the situation. "Of course I'm excited that Her Highness the Princess Consort is back. So you're not excited that His Highness Duke of Qin is back?" "Humph, I'll tell His Highness Duke of Qin," Su Xiaoyu jokingly threatened. Bailey Mingxiang was about to explain when Han Yunxi stopped them. As Bailey Mingxiang, Han Yunxi didn't want Su Xiaoyu to know about her mother's death anniversary, so she didn't say much. She only instructed, "You two be quiet. Don't wake Zhao Mama up. Go to sleep." Bailey Mingxiang chased after her and asked, "Esteemed Wang Fei, this servant will bring you some snacks. What do you want to eat?" "Mistress, I'll make your favorite mango drink. It'll be ready soon. You rest first," Su Xiaoyu said and went to the kitchen. Bailey Mingxiang felt helpless. Han Yunxi asked her to come in and sit down. "Has Pilfiend Pharmacy been doing well recently?" Han Yunxi asked seriously. Pilfiend Pharmacy was originally managed by Gu Beiwei, but after Gu Beiwei left, it was handed over to Mu Ling-er. Since Mu Ling-er had left for a while, most of the matters in the pharmacy had fallen to Bailey Mingxiang. Bailey Mingxiang wasn't as capable as Mu Ling-er, but when it came to other matters, Bailey Mingxiang was much more reliable than Mu Ling-er. "Esteemed Wang Fei, everything in the pharmacy is going well. Medicine City is supplying medicine on time, and all of the branches are running smoothly. It's just that a lot of merchants have come to see us recently to discuss large business deals," Bailey Mingxiang reported truthfully. Han Yunxi sneered. Wouldn't they go to Medicine City to discuss large business deals? Why would they go to Pilfiend Pharmacy? Bailey Mingxiang smiled. Who else would Medicine City do business with besides Pilfiend Pharmacy? Han Yunxi also smiled. The western region is in chaos. If these people don't want to sell medicine there, then they're from the military. They're here to prepare medicine. Then we won't sell. Bailey Mingxiang understood. But Han Yunxi said seriously, "There's no such thing as not selling medicine in this world. Pilfiend Pharmacy is not Medicine Ghost Valley. We'll sell them as much as they want, as long as they can afford the price." The war in the western regions had just begun, so the three nations should still have plenty of medicine in stock. If they were in a rush to prepare medicine so early, then it had to be Ningcheng. Cloud Realm Trade Consortium had plenty of silver, so why wouldn't she take the chance to extort them? This servant understands. Bailey Mingxiang smiled, his red eyes bright and beautiful. Han Yunxi looked at Bailey Mingxiang and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. "You're not destined to be a servant girl. You might as well be a shopkeeper at Pilfiend Pharmacy in the future. Don't stay here to serve tea." Bailey Mingxiang sprang to his feet. "No. Esteemed Wang Fei, we already agreed that you'd save Mingxiang's life, so Mingxiang would serve you for the rest of my life." Han Yunxi felt a little helpless. Actually, she quite liked having Bailey Mingxiang by her side. Compared to Su Xiaoyu, Bailey Mingxiang knew how to take care of the big picture and knew when to advance and retreat. Compared to Zhao Mama, Bailey Mingxiang was younger and more flexible. She needed servants like this by her side. But Bailey Mingxiang had more than just these advantages. It was a pity that she was only a servant girl. In the end, she was still the young miss of the Bailey clan. Han Yunqi had agreed to keep Bailey Mingxiang by her side because she thought that Bailey Mingxiang would grow tired of suffering and grow lonely. Who knew that she'd stay for so long? Bailey Mingxiang's words were overheard by Su Xiaoyu as she entered the room. Su Xiaoyu came over with a mango drink and said coldly, "Bailey Mingxiang, don't you understand that master is chasing you away?" Han Yunqi glared at her and said coldly, "Are you asking for a beating?" Su Xiaoyu pursed her lips and offered up the mango drink. "If master wants to beat you, she'll have to fill her stomach first. Esteemed Wang Fei, this servant will take her leave first." Bailey Mingxiang didn't want to stay any longer. She was afraid that Su Xiaoyu wouldn't be able to hold back and reveal her secret. Although she had never admitted to it, as long as Su Xiaoyu revealed it, she wouldn't have the face to stay in the Duke of Qin's estate. She wouldn't even have the face to stay in the Bailey clan. Han Yunqi was tired as well. After downing the mango drink in large gulps, she had Su Xiaoyu withdraw as well. But the girl only murmured, "Mistress, if you want her to leave, why do you have to be so ruthless? Do you want me to help you?" "Who said I'm chasing her away? I just want her to be the shopkeeper of Pill Fiend Pharmacy. If you don't watch your mouth, I'll sew it up for you." Han Yunqi narrowed her eyes as she coldly warned, "If you sew it up, I won't be able to speak. Can you change it to something else?" Su Xiaoyu chuckled as if she was joking. In reality, she swore to herself that she would definitely scheme to chase Bailey Mingxiang away. Therefore, she wanted to know what kind of punishment she would face when the time came so that she could mentally prepare herself. Han Yunqi was still tired and didn't answer. Instead, she walked up to the loft. Su Xiaoyu hurriedly pulled her back. "Master," just before she could finish speaking, Han Yunqi interrupted her. "If I chase you away, what will you think?" Su Xiaoyu immediately became agitated. She grabbed Han Yunqi's hand so tightly that it hurt Han Yunqi. "Little Yu Er's life was saved by Master. Little Yu Er will live and die as Master's ghost. In life or death, little Yu Er will never leave Master's side." Han Yunqi had just returned from the eerie bamboo forest after seeing a pile of corpses. Hearing about ghosts and whatnot made her hair stand on end. She rolled her eyes at Su Xiaoyu. "Let go." Su Xiaoyu became even more nervous. "Master, if you chase little Yu Er away, little Yu Er won't live anymore. I mean what I say." "Then what right do you have to chase Bailey Mingxiang away?" Han Yunqi countered with a question. I. It wasn't that Su Xiaoyu didn't have a reason. She just didn't want to say it. Everyone in the world thought that Qin Wangfei was the smartest woman in Cloud Realm, but in her eyes, her master was the stupidest woman in Cloud Realm. She couldn't even tell that Bailey Mingxiang liked His Highness Duke of Qin and even kept her by her side. "You're still not letting go?" Han Yunqi was dead tired. Leisurely Cloud Pavilion was a place for her to clear her mind. Why did she feel so vexed the moment she returned? No matter how bold Su Xiaoyu was, she didn't dare to be more unreasonable than Han Yunqi. She could only obediently let go. The next day, Han Yunqi wanted to sleep in, but who knew that she would be woken up by Zhao Mama early in the morning? Zhao Mama didn't dare to go upstairs, so she shouted from the staircase, "Esteemed Wang Fei, are you awake?" "Esteemed Wang Fei, when did you come back? Why didn't you say anything?" This old servant could have gone to buy an old hen to make soup. "Esteemed Wang Fei, are you awake?" This old servant made His Highness's favorite breakfast. "His Highness hasn't woken up yet. Why don't you go over and wake him up?" Han Yunqi covered her head and pretended to be asleep. But when she heard this, she immediately lifted the covers and got out of bed. "Wake Long Fei Yi up? That's a must. Definitely a must." She quickly washed up and went downstairs. When Zhao Mama saw her, her reaction was the same as Su Xiaoyu's last night. Zhao Mama was overjoyed. She looked her up and down and finally said, "Esteemed Wang Fei, you've lost weight." Han Yunqi immediately covered her mouth. Coldly, she warned, "If you say the word lose weight again, I'll send you to the countryside to retire as hens." She didn't lose weight at all. She couldn't lose weight when she was with Long Fei Yi. She felt that she didn't lose to Duanmu Yao in terms of looks, but she wasn't as skinny as Duanmu Yao. Losing weight was a big problem in her heart. Zhao Mama was frightened and nodded repeatedly. Only then did Han Yunqi release her. Go prepare breakfast first. I'll go wake Long Fei Yi up. It had to be said that Zhao Mama was not used to hearing esteemed Wang Fei directly call His Highness by his name. Su Xiaoyu glanced at Bailey Mingxiang and chuckled. Only master can call His Highness by his name. Do you know why? Nonsense. Because His Highness only allows esteemed Wang Fei to call him that. Zhao Mama was grinning from ear to ear. She always felt that her days were meaningless when her two masters weren't at home. Now that her two masters were back, she could busy herself in the kitchens again. Bailey Mingxiang, what do you think? Su Xiaoyu was clearly doing this on purpose. Because His Highness only loves esteemed Wang Fei. Bailey Mingxiang was very serious. She continued, don't go to Pill Fiend Pharmacy today. Stay here and wait upon esteemed Wang Fei and His Highness. I'm leaving. She really did leave without hesitation. Unfortunately, Su Xiaoyu still snorted at her. Although Han Yunqi hadn't slept enough, she was still in good spirits. When she arrived at the door to Long Fei Ye's sleeping quarters, she discovered that the door was locked from the inside and she couldn't enter. She knocked on the door a few times, but there was no response at all. Han Yunqi thought that Long Fei Ye's sleeping quarters were so big that he might not be able to hear her knocking. It wasn't easy for her to wake up earlier than him and wake him up, but it was gone just like that. Actually, she was wrong. Long Fei Yi had always been very vigilant. Even when he was asleep, he still maintained a high level of vigilance. He was aware of every movement around his sleeping quarters. Just as she was about to leave, the shadow guard appeared. Greetings, esteemed Wang Fei. Is His Highness still asleep? She asked casually. His Highness is at the ancestral hall, the shadow guard replied truthfully. That guy woke up so early. Did he find a new clue? Han Yunqi had just arrived at the bamboo forest when she saw Long Fei Yi coming out to greet her. You found a clue? She asked anxiously. Long Fei Yi tossed her a letter that shocked Han Yunqi. A blackmail letter? Actually, she was more inclined to believe that the Empress Dowager of Tianan Country had hired assassins to kidnap Grand Concubine Yi so she could figure out Long Fei Ye's origins. But she never expected to receive a blackmail letter. So this had nothing to do with Long Fei Ye's origins? Han Yunqi opened the letter and read, 3 days afternoon. Bring the profound frost sword to Lost Void Lake to redeem the person. You're only allowed to come alone. If you don't meet the deadline, you'll have to bear the consequences. What bold words. Han Yunqi said cold. Just who is it? Although they knew His Highness Duke of Qin doted on Han Yunqi and couldn't change the fact that Han Yunqi was his official consort, they still planned to marry off their daughters to him. Once the Duke of Qin became emperor, he'd have an empress and 4 consorts in his harem. Han Yunqi might not be able to become empress even if she was his official consort. Thus, these people were filled with enmity towards Han Yunqi. His Highness Duke of Qin's actions were clearly for the 5 clan heads to see, warning them to give up any unnecessary thoughts. But Bailey Yuanlong was worried. After all, now wasn't the time. There was no need for His Highness Duke of Qin to offend these people. This was a critical period. If he didn't calculate wrong, the Duke of Qin would make his move this autumn. All of Cloud Realm continent would be thrown into turmoil. He was looking forward to the arrival of autumn, but he had to be careful now. Nothing could happen to the South Central regions. Seeing His Highness Duke of Qin so willfully embrace Han Yunqi in front of everyone, Bailey Yuanlong was both worried and angry. Of course, he didn't dare to be angry at the Duke of Qin, but Han Yunqi. This woman was indeed unusual, but she was still a source of calamity. All of you, rise and sit. Long Fei finally spoke up. Everyone rose to their seats, but all eyes were on Han Yunqi's face. Han Yunqi felt uncomfortable and murmured, Long Fei Yi, just what's going on? Nothing. I just don't like you sitting by yourself. Long Fei Yi murmured as he buried his head in her neck. Han Yunqi's heart warmed. She was about to speak when the Shao clan head stood up and clasped his hands in a graceful gesture. This one has long heard of esteemed Wang Fei's illustrious name. Meeting you today is the good fortune of 3 lifetimes. Today, the 6 ministries have gathered here to discuss the war in the West and seek peace and prosperity for the South Central regions. Since esteemed Wang Fei has come, you must have something to teach us. I don't know what esteemed Wang Fei has to say about Cloud Realm Continent's current situation. We are all ears. Aristocratic families really were different. Even their bows were so graceful and their words so refined. But so what? Han Yunshi knew they were here to cause trouble. In Han Yunshi's eyes, these people didn't have the bearing of an aristocratic family at all. Han Yunshi didn't want to get involved in politics because she was too busy. She didn't like it either. Unfortunately, Long Fei had pushed her into the position of calamity. She couldn't lose face for him, could she? Just based on those heartwarming words of his just now, she had to do her best. She had been uncomfortable sitting there, but now she relaxed and leaned lazily against Long Fei's chest. Then all of you listen well. This Wang Fei will only say this once. These words angered the elders so much that their faces turned green. The Shao clan head had been polite just then, but Han Yunshi really didn't hold back. When had they ever been so rude to? This woman was indeed spoiled and arrogant. If they didn't suppress her arrogance now, what would happen in the future? Please speak. Shao family's patriarch suppressed his anger and stood, not sitting down. Western Zhou, Tianing, and Tianan are at war. For the South Central regions, this is a golden opportunity that cannot be missed. Han Yunshi's words made the Minister of Revenue laugh. Esteemed Wang Fei, everyone knows about this. Naturally, the 5 clan heads couldn't mock Han Yunshi in public. They had to maintain the demeanor of an aristocratic family, but the ministers they'd elected were their spokespeople. Then you know about it too? Han Yunshi asked with interest. Of course. Our South Central region's commander-in-chief's estate will be the fisherman who reaps the benefits from the war between the 3 countries. The Minister of Revenue said seriously. What kind of fishermen's benefits are there? Han Yunshi asked again. Once the 3 countries are weakened, it'll be time for our South Central regions to set out on an expedition. At that time, not only will we be able to swallow up Tianning's territory, we can also expand to Western Zhou and Tianan. Han Yunshi interrupted him. Everyone knows about this too, right? These are matters for the Ministry of War. You don't need to worry about them. What this Wang Fei wants to know is what your Ministry of Revenue is planning to do, and what benefits do you seek? The Minister of Revenue didn't hesitate to say, our headquarters will naturally assist the Ministry of War in recruiting soldiers, buying horses, and preparing rations. The Ministry of Revenue was the most important thing in a country. It was in charge of the country's territory, farmland, household registration, taxes, salaries, and all other financial matters. It could be said that it was the country's finance minister. The Minister of Revenue's answer was full of confidence, but Han Yunshi only laughed out loud. Doesn't everyone already know about this? The Minister of Revenue had been choked twice by Han Yunshi, and she was even using his own words. He was very unwilling to accept this and retorted, then esteemed Wang Fei, what brilliant ideas do you have? Please enlighten me. I was just about to say it, but you interrupted me, didn't you? Here, let's agree that you're not allowed to interrupt me this time. No matter how good your ideas are, I'll have to trouble you to endure until this Wang Fei finishes speaking. Why don't you tell me again? Han Yunshi asked patiently. The 5 clan heads' expressions turned even uglier. On the side, Bailey Yuanlong couldn't help but laugh. Meanwhile, Long Fei was holding Han Yunshi's hand and patting her waist from time to time. It was obvious that he was in high spirits. Esteemed Wang Fei, please enlighten me. Chapter 688. Han Yunshi said, Your Excellency, it's still too early for you to recruit soldiers, buy horses, and prepare provisions. In this regard, instead of preparing for war, it's better for the Ministry of War to spend a month or 2 observing the situation and pondering whether there's a way to subdue the enemy without fighting. After all, war is the most hopeless solution. Moreover, even if we do send out troops in the end, it's just to clean up the mess. There's no need to prepare too much. Hearing this, the Minister of War felt helpless. Unfortunately, he was afraid of Bailey Yuanlong and didn't dare to speak. Unexpectedly, the Minister of Personnel next to him spoke up with a smile. "Esteemed Wang Fei, it's easy for you to say that. Based on the current situation," Han Yunshi unhappily interrupted, "are you the Minister of Revenue?" This lowly official is in charge of the Ministry of Personnel." The Minister of Personnel quickly revealed his identity. "This Wang Fei is instructing the Minister of Personnel, not talking to you." "Why are you interrupting?" Han Yunshi coldly retorted. The Minister of Personnel was speechless and didn't know how to respond. He could only clasp his hands and say, "Yes, this lowly official has spoken out of turn." He was truly afraid that Han Yunshi would deal with him the same way she dealt with the Minister of Personnel. If he couldn't come up with a good plan, he'd be in trouble. "Since you've spoken out of turn, someone come, slap your mouth." Long Fei suddenly spoke coldly. The main hall was very quiet to begin with only the sound of water dripping from the eaves outside the door. When Long Fei spoke, the water on the roof seemed to have been frozen by his icy voice. There wasn't a single sound, and the entire hall was terrifyingly quiet. Trembling with fear, the Minister of Personnel looked towards the Patriarch who had recommended him for help. However, the Patriarch's brows were tightly knitted, as if he was dissatisfied, but he didn't say anything. Soon, an attendant came over. The Minister of Personnel hastily knelt and apologized. "Esteemed Wang Fei, this lowly official has spoken out of turn. This lowly official has been rude. Please be magnanimous and forgive this lowly official this time." Han Yunshi waved her hand, dismissing the attendant. The Minister of Personnel finally let out a sigh of relief. "Many thanks, esteemed Wang Fei." Bailey Yuanlong was extremely worried as he watched from the side. He was afraid that Han Yunshi would let down His Highness Duke of Qin and make a fool of herself in front of the clan lords. Now that things had reached such an awkward state, if she didn't say something that could convince everyone, the 5 clans wouldn't let it go so easily. The facts proved that Han Yunshi was worthy of Long Fei's favoritism and love. Her words made everyone present stunned and speechless. They were sincerely convinced. She said, "With the war between the 3 kingdoms, there will definitely be a lot of high-quality resources flowing out, either to Northern Li or the central and southern regions. The central and southern regions are the most stable places and the most suitable places to live. Therefore, these high-quality resources will all flow to the central and southern regions." As she spoke, she asked seriously, "What do you mean by high-quality resources?" "They were people and things." "Let's talk about people first. Who are they?" Everyone looked at Han Yunshi, extremely curious and surprised. They didn't quite understand what she meant, but they were all very interested. The term high-quality resources that Han Yunshi spoke of was something they had never heard of before. Han Yunshi answered her own question. People are talents from all 360 professions: farming, husbandry, sewing, weaving, masonry, iron, earth, wood, medicine, wine, cloth dyeing, kiln burning, and all sorts of other professions. There are also scholars and famous scholars. For the sake of avoiding the chaos of war, they can only flee to the south-central regions. When Han Yunshi spoke to this point, the corners of Long Fei's mouth had already curled up in amusement and appreciation. "Then let's talk about things." "What are things?" "Rare beasts, gold, stones, and antiques. Heroes emerge in troubled times, and treasures emerge in troubled times. These things will either flow to the central and southern regions with the refugees, or they will be sold," Han Yunshi said seriously. Everyone nodded unconsciously. This was indeed the truth. Instead of rushing to recruit soldiers and buy horses, why don't the Ministry of Revenue think about how to retain these high-quality resources, how to seize the opportunity to make good use of these resources, how to gather treasures, how to retain people to strengthen oneself, and how to prosper 100 industries. The prosperity of 100 industries is the foundation of a strong country's stability. A strong country can subdue the enemy's soldiers without fighting. When Han Yunshi finished speaking, the entire place became even quieter. It was so quiet that even the sound of falling leaves could be heard. No one would have thought that such a pampered and arrogant woman lying lazily in the Duke of Qin's embrace could actually say such words. She wasn't the least bit inferior to the grown men present. How was she an imperial concubine? She was practically a talented general. Moreover, she was a genius. In the history of Cloud Realm Continent, every time there was a war, all the countries would think about sending out weapons and rations. No one had ever considered the things that Han Yunqi had said. The curve of Long Fei Ye's mouth was very beautiful. He finally let go of Han Yunqi's small waist, but he didn't let go of her. His hands went past her waist and clapped. Good. Excellent. Esteemed Wang Fei is brilliant. This general admires you. Bailey Yuanlong was overjoyed. His hanging heart finally settled down. He thought that even if esteemed Wang Fei really was a source of trouble for His Highness, he would accept it, submit, and submit. Brilliant. Truly brilliant. I was right to come today. Listening to esteemed Wang Fei's words is better than studying for 10 years. Esteemed Wang Fei, seeing is better than hearing. This old man can be considered to have learned something today. Lord Gao, esteemed Wang Fei has pointed out the way for the Ministry of Revenue. You must go back and think about it carefully. If you miss this opportunity, this old man will hold you accountable. In the future, I ask esteemed Wang Fei to give me many pointers, many pointers. The attitudes of the 5 patriarchs had completely changed. Of course, they didn't forget that behind Han Yunqi was Long Fei, so they flattered Long Fei as well. The 6 ministers asked many questions, and Han Yunqi answered them all fluently. Coming from the modern era, she had gathered thousands of years of wisdom in her brain. Although she wasn't a professional when it came to governing a country, her perspective and foresight were far beyond what anyone present could imagine. It wasn't until noon that everyone asked to be excused. Long Fei didn't have any intention of keeping them for lunch, so they were quite tactful. During lunch, Bailey Yuanlong found an excuse to invite Long Fei to the side hall. His Highness's eyes really can't be wrong. Esteemed Wang Fei, before Bailey Yuanlong could finish, Long Fei interrupted him coldly. Is there anything else? Hadn't he heard enough flattery this morning? Long Fei was already tired of it. Bailey Yuanlong had no choice but to be blunt. Your Highness, it's too early to offend the aristocratic families. Although esteemed Wang Fei had convinced the patriarchs today, they were only convinced because of today's topic. Esteemed Wang Fei's performance today would only make them even more dissatisfied and wary. What? I've already given them the 5 ministries of civil service, rights, punishment, and works. Are they still not satisfied? Long Fei questioned. He couldn't make a move for the time being, nor did he have the time to make a move against these aristocratic families. However, he could still suppress their arrogance and give them a warning. Bailey Yuanlong was speechless. Long Fei said, Bailey Yuanlong, these people aren't stupid. They won't dare to act rashly before this prince proclaims himself as an emperor. This prince is just giving them a reminder to stop having any ideas about Han Yunqi. Long Fei's real purpose in suppressing the aristocratic family's arrogance was to let Han Yunqi establish her might. Han Yunqi hadn't disappointed him today. When they returned to the dining hall, Han Yunqi was chewing slowly. All of Cloud Realm Continent's sceneries and delicacies were concentrated there, so it was a wonderful place. Even Jiangnan's Plum Blossom Sea wasn't the real Jiangnan, but north of it, where it intersected with South Ning. I'll leave the estimates of the 7 major grain-producing regions to the Ministry of Revenue. I'll leave these to you, Long Fei said before taking out 3 thick account books. Han Yunqi didn't understand how this guy had gotten so many accounts, but she soon understood after flipping through them. These were none other than the accounts of all of Long Fei's businesses in Cloud Realm Continent. None of them were small businesses, but large ones. More than 60% of them were located in the central and southern regions. Moreover, most of them were restaurants, hotels, and private banks, followed by fertile fields. Han Yunqi finally understood where Long Fei's money came from. Although they couldn't compare to Cloud Realm Trade Consortium, if they were properly managed, they might be able to rival the consortium in the future. Han Yunxi stared and stared before she suddenly looked up at Long Fei Yi. Hold on, Long Fei Yi. Are you giving all your businesses to me? This guy. First he wanted me to establish my power in front of the central and southern region's aristocratic families. Then he gave me all his businesses. He seems to be preparing for something. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.